Ready when you are.
I'd like to welcome everybody out tonight to the Deer Valley Governing Board's work session. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 5:31. Let the record show that all board members are present, save Mrs. Fisher, who is attending telephonically. Do I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The item on the work session agenda is the Long Range Planning Committee report. Turn the time over to Ms. Hadamok.
President Carver, Dr. Finch, members of the board, and guests in person and online. It is my pleasure this evening to bring to you a report from the Long Range Planning Initiative and Committee. Specifically, what we're going to discuss this evening is attendance areas. We'll take a look at first at the charge of the committee and its purpose, the process we've used, and the timeline. We will review the community feedback, community input, and data, additional data, and what the recommendations are from the committee at this time. Just a little bit of background. I think we're all very familiar with many districts in the Maricopa County that are closing schools. Districts like Glendale Elementary School District, Kyrene Elementary School District, and Mesa Unified School District are closing multiple schools. A handful, a few, 5 to 6 or more in some of those districts. Other districts, as recently as Alhambra, just announced they're closing 2 schools. We've seen Scottsdale closing 2 schools. Cave Creek, multiple districts are closing schools due to decreased student enrollment across the state. And that is attributed to multiple different reasons, including lower birth rate, et cetera. Deer Valley is similar, but we're a little different. We are 367 square miles, as most of you know. Sorry, I just keep hearing feedback, so I'll move that back a little further. Let me know if you can't hear me. And we go basically from Bell Road around 7th Ave all the way to 83rd Ave, and then we kind of branch out as you go up north all the way to the end of Maricopa County, including half of Lake Pleasant. So what we have that other districts don't have is still some significant room for growth, and we are expected to see decline in enrollment for the next few years, but then around approximately 2030, fiscal year 2030, fiscal year 2031, we're expected to see an increase in enrollment again. But as you can see on the map, the diversity of the district from the more densely populated schools at the southern end of the district to the more rural schools at the northern end of the district, we have some disparities from the schools even now. And so we formed the Long Range Planning Committee and started to look at how we could use these 40 school buildings maybe a little better to make sure that our students in the schools have an equitable experience from one school to the other, and to help avoid overcrowding at some of those schools where it's already happening before we get to 2030. So the charge of the committee was to develop a long-range recommendation. This came from Dr. Finch. The committee was not looking at just today or just tomorrow. The guidance was to go all the way out to 2035 and see if we can balance enrollment for the long term using the facilities that we already have. It was easy to go out to 2035. We do annually commission a demographic study, and that study is always 10 years in the future. The goal was to balance that enrollment. If we could use some of our underutilized facilities and perhaps move some students there to relieve overcrowding at some of the schools that are seeing it now, then we might be able to do that. Utilizing facilities efficiently, that way you've got the same number of students perhaps going through the cafeteria. Students aren't rushed to eat their lunch. You have more opportunities to use the multi-purpose room. Things like that, by balancing that enrollment, helps that overall experience in the schools. And of course, maintaining our educational excellence. We are an A district. We know that we're the best district in the state, but we want to make sure that our anything that we do or recommend will maintain the educational excellence that our community and parents have come to expect from us. Next, the committee developed its charge and purpose. The definitions for each of these were actually developed by the committee in an activity we did at our November meeting. And so every time that we discussed an option, we wanted to take a look at, again, the educational excellence, proximity, trying to keep neighborhoods together when possible, making sure we had a sustainable plan over time. If you're familiar with any district that has, it happens more when you have areas of significant growth, that oftentimes a boundary could change from one year to the next and then again. And so the goal is to try and avoid that whenever possible. Transportation implications. Can our already stressed transportation department manage the changes that are suggested? Will it help transportation? Will students have access to transportation per governing board policy when changes are implemented? The committee actually wanted to make sure that there were plenty of opportunities for community input, and so you will see we have several slides discussing later on how we did obtain that community input. And we want to retain and optimize our DVUSD school buildings. As we saw in the previous slide, we do have 40 unique campuses, and they have been named as some of our best assets in some of the evaluations that we've had in the past. Here's the timeline. The committee actually formed, it was formed by my predecessor last May, not knowing who was going to replace him as he was on his way out the door. Dr. Gail Galligan joined as a co-chair. Couldn't have asked for a better co-chair. She's been very instrumental in answering community questions about curriculum and opportunities for programs. At that first meeting in May, what the committee did was review the 2024 demographic report. There's actually a podcast created, an AI podcast created from that demographic report that is on the website dvusd.org/boundaries. And the committee listened to that podcast and just kind of looked at the current state of the district. We met back up in November. The reason being for the gap is that depending on what happened with the election in November was going to play a crucial role on how big or small of changes that we could look at for this year. If the override had not passed and we had to cut, say, another $10 million from our operating budget, we, the committee, may have had to look at something much more significant than some minor boundary adjustments to better utilize our facilities. Because what also happened in the last 2 years on the election is that in 23 and 24, not 25, we did have a bond initiative on there that failed. And so typically what Deer Valley's been able to do in the past when there is growth at a school is we've been able to put a portable building or move portable buildings at those facilities in order to accommodate that growth. With our 2019 bond is quickly running out. It's the only bond funds we have now, and the line for growth is virtually exhausted, and so we do not have the funding to add capacity at those schools at this time, and so that is why then the committee moved toward looking at those minor boundary adjustments. In December, that's actually the end of November was when parent surveys began. That was the first round of parent feedback. We did 2 surveys, the first in November that came out a little before Thanksgiving. I think it was open for a solid 2 weeks to make sure that everyone who wanted to could respond. We used that to develop a second survey that went out in December, and that was a forced ranking survey. We'll take a look at those results here shortly. We opened up an email address during this time as well for community feedback, but we also, Dr. Finch and his Soup Scoop podcast, we had an episode of that talked about the long-range planning committee, a lot of the things that we've already discussed in this presentation, kind of the need for looking at these boundaries. And during December meeting is when the committee identified schools that were projected over or under capacity currently and then moving into 2035. January, the committee reviewed boundary adjustment recommendations, and that's when our community forums began. We'll talk about those a little bit more too, but we had 3 community forums in the areas where boundary changes were being discussed and contemplated. February and March is where we are now. We've had final committee meetings. We have our board preview and recommendation this evening, and we hope to bring the recommendations back for formal approval on March 10th. Shout out to demographer Rick Brammer and Applied Economics. We've got them noted here as the author of the demographic study. Mr. Brammer is here in the audience this evening. And here are some of the key takeaways from that 24 demographic study as to the key factors that are influencing enrollment. We've talked a little bit about this already. The district is aging, resulting in fewer school-aged children. Overall, district enrollment has declined. Some of that is from aging out neighborhoods. Certainly, we have lower enrollment in the lower grades. We've got kind of a high school bubble going now. And so as our senior classes graduate, the kindergarten classes coming in are smaller than those those that are leaving. And so that is causing a significant part of the decline. But not only that, we see that those families that are having children are having fewer children per household than what we used to see as well. And we mentioned our enrollment shifts are geographic. So southern end of the district may see more aging out, where the central area of the district may still be growing, and pockets vary in the northern end of the district. Boundaries are a key tool that we can use to maintain our program quality and financial stability. Some of the other data the committee looked at, we talked about the parent surveys. We looked at not just the demographer's report, but we looked at it compared to our current enrollment and found that the demographic study or our current enrollment was consistent with the demographic study. We assessed the data by school. We looked at open enrollment. That was data that was requested by the committee. What is our current open enrollment? We looked at it by open enrollment from inside the district and outside of the district. We looked at student assessment data. That was a request by a committee member. We found that we wanted to see if there was any correlation to a smaller school size to assessment data. The district maintains the same staffing ratio and class size by grade level across the district, regardless of school size. And so what we found with that is there is no correlation between school size and assessment results. I think those of you who are, or on the dais who have been classroom teachers, you know that the single greatest factor tied to student success is the classroom teacher. And that's what we found. We found low enrollment schools with some of the highest scores and some of our highest enrolled schools with some of the highest scores. And so once we looked at that, we didn't consider it any further for our recommendation. We took a look at schools with highest and lowest percentage capacity compared to their projection. And this is a good time to clarify and really discuss what capacity means. The capacity that we have is typically assigned to us by the School Facilities Division. You'll hear us slip from time to time. They've received some name changes over the years. School Facilities Division, School Facilities Oversight Board, School Facilities Board. And so they assign student capacity to a school based on entire square footage. It includes the cafeteria, it includes the multi-purpose room, it includes the passing space in the hallways. And so what we actually find is that schools that are nearing 100% or probably over 80% of that SFB capacity are already overcrowded, and the principals are finding it difficult to place new incoming students in classrooms. And the last thing we looked at was stakeholder surveys. We're going to start really to talk about that community input as it was quintessential for the committee. They really wanted to see what the community felt. A couple of the committee members had been part of boundary changes in the past when new schools opened, and so it was important to them that we heard from the community. And these are some of the key themes that we heard. They wanted access to reliable, safe, and efficient busing. They wanted balanced enrollment, consistent open enrollment process, equal access to high-quality education, grandfathering current school attendance for existing students to minimize overcrowding, and stability and access to specific academic programs. And these community themes, I should clarify, are specific to the survey. So for the 2 surveys, we actually had about 2,000 parents open each survey and about 1,600 actually complete the survey. This is a heat map thanks to our Dr. Scott Smith, our resident data analyst. And because this is an average rank from the key themes, so the key themes you see across the top in white, those are the key themes that emerged from the open-ended first survey. And so these results were the forced ranking. So these are the top 8 key themes that we just saw on the previous slide that came from that open-ended survey, and these are how parents then ranked them from 1 to 8. And so the number that's closest to 1 means it was the most important to parents, and so it's actually at the top of the list, which is why you see equal access to, high-quality education, resources, and opportunities there with an overall average rank of 2.77 comes to the top. We have a legend there at the bottom. The next was grandfathering current school attendance for existing students. 3 is access to specific programs, Mandarin, Spanish, immersion, band, gifted, etc. 4 is stability in current academic programs. 5 is minimizing overcrowding. 6 is access to reliable, safe, and efficient busing. 7 is balancing school enrollment, and 8 is consistent open enrollment processes. So the top insights from parents and community members these are the items that they ranked at number 1 or number 2. And you'll see it's very similar to when we looked at the items that were the top 1. But this being a total count versus an average, the number that is higher on this graph is what is most important to the parents. And so again, we see that equal access to high quality education, resources, and opportunities comes to the top with over 684 parents ranking it at either number 1 or number 2. Second, we had a bit of a change, and this is stability in current academic programs. Third is minimizing overcrowding. The reason that says number 2 is there is a text box at the top that when this was converted from an online presentation to a PowerPoint, it's counts of responses ranked as number 1 or number 2. So please do not let that confuse you on item number 3, minimizing overcrowding. That number 2 belongs to the text box above. Number 4, we see access to specific programs. 5, we have grandfathering current school attendance for existing students. 6, access to reliable, safe, and efficient busing. And coming in at 7 and 8 again, balancing enrollment across schools and consistent open enrollment processes. I do think that the reason, and this is Heather's inference, that the reason balancing enrollment across schools came in low is because those taking the survey understood that that's the intent of the long-range planning committee. That is the charge of committee. That's what we're trying to do. And so understanding that that's what we were doing, I'm going to assume that they ranked other things higher. We were able to answer some of these questions during our, not our first, but I think we had this on our second and third community meetings. Those community meetings were conducted January 20th at Boulder Creek High School, January 22nd at Sandra Day O'Connor High School, and January 28th at Barry Goldwater High School. And so during those last 2 at O'Connor and Barry Goldwater, we talked about open enrollment and grandfathering students. And it is current governing board policy that students who are attending a school when the boundaries change may stay at the school with guaranteed status. Now, the guaranteed status is contingent on capacity at the school. But we'll see when we look at some of these projections where we do believe every school would maintain enough capacity for any student that needed to change, wanted to remain at that school moving forward. So we just used the example, a student at Canyon Springs Attending there right now, 25, 26, and Canyons, that portion of the boundary is rezoned to Anthem in 26, 27. They are guaranteed ongoing status through open enrollment at Canyon Springs until they promote to Boulder Creek High School. Here's the caveat on that. Transportation is not provided for students on open enrollment, and that is across the district. We had lots of questions as well about students on IEPs. What happens if my student is on an IEP? Will you deny my open enrollment? And the short answer is no. It is not legal for us to deny open enrollment for a student on an IEP. And I think the way we tried to phrase it during those meetings is the services follow the student. It's not by the school, it follows the student. So whether you stay at the school you're at or move to the next school, you would still be guaranteed those same services through your IEP. So the way we ran the community forums is all of the slides that you just saw, we did present those at the community forum, and then recommendations. We talked about recommendations for all three of the high school regions, where we're going to see in just a little bit. And then once we were done, we took all of the questions from the community. We took them down on note cards so that we could bring back to the committee the questions of the community. We didn't want to try and translate them because sometimes things get lost in translation. And I do want to thank several committee members who were present at one or more. We actually had one committee member who was present at all three of the community forums, and that was very much appreciated. It just helps us bring back the message to the committee when we came and talked about all of the community concerns when the committee reconvened following these three meetings. But in all, from those three meetings, we had 56 handwritten comments or different cards from those three forums. And you will see that the things that emerged from the community forums are, you'll see the recurring theme, what you saw the committee determine in their guiding principles, what you saw from the survey, and what you will see from the community forums are all incredibly similar. Stability matters. Families emphasized predictability for their students. Transportation equals access. So transportation was raised as an equity issue affecting who may or may not be able to continue in specialized program. So a lot of this related to, let's say I am currently a Union Park family and I am enrolled in the Spanish immersion program. I understand that I can stay on open enrollment and that my status is guaranteed. But if I'm not bused, I might not still have access to that program. Sibling placement, there were lots of questions about sibling placement. If I am in attendance on open enrollment at, we'll just use Union Park for example again, and in 2 years my sibling's going to come on as a kindergartner, do they get guaranteed open enrollment? They do not get guaranteed open enrollment, but again, per governing board policy, it is preference. And so we have a couple groups per policy that are given preference when it comes to looking at that open enrollment because it is always a district desire to keep families together whenever we can in that case. Community cohesion, many expressed a desire to keep neighborhoods and establish communities together where possible. Transparency in the process, families asked for a clear explanation of options considered, constraints, and timing. And equity concerns, feedback reflected concern about uneven impacts on certain families or programs, and it's typically those signature programs that don't exist at every school, such as the Renaissance Highly Gifted programs or an immersion program. Most of the feedback consisted of questions and concerns. I can say that the community was very respectful. Their input was appreciated during that process. Actually, during the last community forum, some folks appreciated that they felt more heard in this process than they had in the past. And I give the committee full credit on that for making sure that, that the community had a voice. So overall, families recognize a need for the capacity programming and enrollment, but what it boils down to is folks don't often want to be moved. It's okay if someone else is being moved, but it really makes a difference when it's you and it's your children that you're dealing with. And certainly as parents and teachers and educators, we understand that. Just an overall, just one more way to look at the coding language. This was, most of the comments reflected concern, anxiety, particularly regarding program continuity, transportation, and predictability. I think that sums up the community forums very nicely. Comments were curious or informational, asking for clarifying about processes, policies, or impacts, such as those we've talked about, transportation and open enrollment. Those were the biggies, the recurring themes over and over. A smaller number of comments expressed frustration or anger, typically connected to perceived lack of clarity or timing, and a limited number of comments were supportive or understanding, acknowledging the need while seeking thoughtful implementation. And so emails, I mentioned previously that we did start up a new email address. It's future@dvusd.org. This count of about 115 emails comes from about 4:30 p.m. yesterday, give or take. And that's not, it's not necessarily 115 unique individuals. We did answer some questions and have some additional questions that came in from some members of the public. But what we saw from the emails was, again, concern over loss of transportation or bus service, some concern for student social emotional well-being, separating children from established friendships, disrupting their sense of belonging, and social emotional difficulty for young children. Program access and equity came up again as well as did neighborhood cohesion and questions about the district planning rationale. Coding language then for the emails, broad and consistent base of feedback expressing reservations about the specific boundary lines, concerns regarding the planning rationale and communication, why implementation in 26-27 and not later, student social and academic continuity, operational and safety challenges, and again, that ties back to busing services, request for alternative implementation methods. Sometimes it's grandfathering, sometimes it's a different map, move a different neighborhood, or perhaps a delay to mitigate impact on current families. Now with that, I'm going to start to go through the 3 different regions where the committee discussed potential boundary changes. These regions were identified in that work I discussed earlier, where we took a look at the current enrollment and the projected 2035 enrollment, and identifying schools that were either well above, I think we looked at 80% or above, and well below. We looked at 50% or below of that SFB capacity that we talked about. So I'm going to go through all 3 of the recommendations, and kind of much like the committee process, I'll just ask if we can hold questions till the end so that I can get through all of them to make sure that I don't lose my place and I do justice for each of these recommended changes. But there'll be plenty of time for questions, and if we need to come back to a slide when we get there, we're happy to do that. These are in alphabetical order, so that's what we will see here in the presentation. So we're going to start with Barry Goldwater High School region. The schools affected by the recommended boundary changes for Goldwater region include Norterra Canyon, Sonoran Foothills, and Union Park. So here, when we talk about that capacity, here is, one of the charts that we put together for the committee to review. And so it takes a look at the SFB capacity, the enrollment of the school as of, I think it's usually about the 40th day, and the percent of capacity that is for this year. The projection then for 2034, 2035 was based on that 2024 demographers report. And so you can see here that the 2 schools identified that are already at 90% capacity or above, which makes it difficult for them to accept already new students that are coming into the neighborhood. And those 2 schools are Sonoran Foothills and Union Park. And if we look out to 2034 and 2035, Sonoran Foothills is projected, we're getting close to 200% capacity, and Union Park at over 150% capacity there at about 161%. So what the committee then did was look at where are there schools close where you might be able to have a boundary adjustment. And so we will, with that, one of the schools, Sunset Ridge, does have 2 schools, or actually 3 schools close to its boundary that might make sense, but what was identified is Sunset Ridge. And so the recommendation is, these are actually show all of the potential boundary changes that were discussed. On the next slide, we'll see the first actual recommendation. But what were discussed was at the top of the map, an area of Sonoran Foothills moving up to Sunset Ridge. We discussed, it was a committee member request at our January 14th meeting that perhaps that southern part of Sonoran Foothills might be able to be moved to Norterra Canyon. We'll talk more about that. You can see that it was actually, did not come out for recommendation by the time we had all of the meetings. And then toward the bottom of the map, you can see that area currently in Union Park boundary that was recommended to return to Norterra Canyon. So for the Sonoran Foothills to Sunset Ridge section, it is the north section of Sonoran Foothills from I-17, roughly North Paloma Parkway between Dove Valley Road and Carefree Highway, recommended to move to Sunset Ridge. And with that, it is one of the rare, we're not looking at high school boundaries in general, but this one section would then, moving to Sunset Ridge is a Boulder Creek Region school, and so it would be a switch to not only Sunset Ridge, but to Boulder Creek High School. And so the attendance area enrollment graph that you see here is one that comes from Rick Brammer and Applied Economics as well. The top, so you will see there are 2 different ways to look at this. We look at the attendance area enrollment. So that is if every student who lived in that attendance area attended the school, and those were the only students who attended the school. That's what the enrollment would look like between Sonoran Foothills and Sunset Ridge. And you can see that, I really can't see it from there, but I don't know if that'll help. I'll get it, it's fine, thanks, Gail. The first projection then is for 26-27, which would be the first year of change. That looking at 26-27, there's both of the schools are more balanced with enrollment, it looks like in the 600s. Sorry, I have some stuff memorized, but not all of it. But what I really like to look at is between 561 and 783. Sorry, I was looking at the top. So the top is the current. If nothing changed, that is where the 2 schools would be next year and moving into 2035. Option for attendance area enrollment, thanks, Gail, is if the change is made, what happens to the enrollment? So you see that balance coming into play where Sunset Ridge picks up students, and then Sonoran Foothills has that room for the growth. If you go all the way out to the current projection for 2035, you can see the 2 schools would be near equal. More growth is expected in the Sonoran Foothills area than Sunset Ridge at this time. The graph that I prefer is the student enrollment graph on the bottom. So again, the top is what the current enrollment is. If no changes are made between the 2 school boundaries between now and 2035, you can see where Sonoran Foothills would have well over 1,000 students, and Sunset Ridge would continue to decline below 500 students. And so with the option on this one, you can see where it's a lot more matched even next year and then moving into the future. And the reason I like the school enrollment is because this takes a look at which students are there. And so it's based on the enrollment right now that students that are there. It's a little bit more realistic presentation of where the feet might move once the change is made. So what was not recommended was the area from the southern end of the Sonoran Foothills border, which is about I-17 on the west, east over to the Norterra Canyon current boundary, and then south to Sonoran, or between Sonoran Desert Drive and to Dixoletta on the south. It's not recommended. So what we didn't want to do with these recommendations, we would not accept anything that created a reverse situation. If the committee had suggested both of these changes, Sonoran Foothills would be well under capacity. They would have a little bit too much room for growth. And so in the end, the committee did not vote to bring this recommendation forward. Also included in the Barry Goldwater region, this is included, there is the Paseo Hills boundary at this time actually goes Paseo Hills, where it's located there at the northeast neighborhood of 35th Avenue and Deer Valley. Their border actually stretches west across the canal that's right there on the west side of 35th Avenue. And there's a brand new development there where no houses have been built yet, but the construction crews are moving very, very quickly. And that is Paseo Heights Development. It is south of 39th Avenue at Pinnacle Peak. And so Desert Sage is due north of this development and has declining enrollment through now in 2035. So Desert Sage is also in the Sandra Day O'Connor region, so we will see a couple of these slides twice when they come up in those regions. And so the recommendation for this new development, not just the new development, but using 35th Avenue as a hard boundary, and then that canal as a hard boundary, moving in unoccupied land west of 35th Avenue all the way to, I had to really zoom in on the map to find the name of that one, but it's Model Way on the south. It's about Model Way and 43rd Avenue on that southwest corner. So this is the other one of two examples where this recommendation would take and include a high school boundary change. But in this case, no students would be affected since none have moved in. So by the time the homes are built, when the boundary adjustment is approved, these students would go to Desert Sage, which is a K-6 versus Paseo Hills, a K-8. And then they also would go to Hillcrest Middle School and then to Sandra Day O'Connor High School. And so you will see on this map where we've got then Desert Sage, Paseo Hills, Hillcrest Middle School, and I think that says, it should say Deer Valley Middle School. So they would move from Deer Valley Middle School to Hillcrest Middle School, and then from Paseo to Desert Sage. And so that does help keep Desert Sage. They're projected to be, I think, right around 50% in 2035. But the map is the same with the graph where the attendance area enrollment are students who are currently living within those boundaries only. It doesn't take into account any projections for school choice. The school enrollment graph at the bottom does take that into consideration. And so that's the one I like to take a look at. Desert Sage, without any changes, out to 2035 is projected at just over 400 students. Paseo Hills remains relatively steady in the projections through 2035. And the middle schools actually weren't, this is a good time to mention that this recommendation is the only one where middle schools would come into play. Well, one of two where middle schools come into play. But without any changes, the middle schools remain relatively stable over the next 10 years, which is why there was no more significant requests for the middle schools moving into next year or 2035. So you can see on the bottom then, with the option, with it approved, it does keep, Desert Sage is still in the 400 range, but it's at the higher end. Paseo Hills remains in the 500s. Deer Valley Middle School in the 400s, and then Hillcrest Middle School in the 400s. So those schools relatively are fairly balanced with this recommendation. And the recommended adjustment to help the overcrowding at Union Park is there is an area, it does include much of the Fireside neighborhood, from Dixolet at approximately 23rd Avenue and east to approximately 18th Avenue, using the canal on the western border between Union Park and Norterra Canyon, going south to Copperhead Trail, ending east of 15th Drive, would return to Norterra Canyon. I can say what we heard from that community input, that this is an area of frustration because the school just opened in 2020. Union Park opened in COVID years, and so some of these folks would then return to Norterra Canyon when they potentially have to return to Norterra Canyon when Union Park just opened in what would be 6 years ago by the time next school year comes around. Part of this neighborhood was proposed originally to remain at Norterra Canyon, if I understand correctly, when that boundary was proposed. But it ended up, that recommendation was not approved. And so what we're seeing as a result of that is that Union Park is at over 90% capacity, and it's what would have been projected from this area of the neighborhood not remaining at Norterra Canyon when that boundary was approved in probably 2019 or 2019 for fiscal year 20 or fiscal year 2021. And so you can see then, if we're looking at the school enrollment, so based on where students are, without any changes, Norterra Canyon, which is 1.2 miles from Union Park, would be at under 500 students, and you can see Union Park would be well at over 1,000 students in 2035. But with the change, those two schools are nearly identical come 2035. We did have some confusion regarding what the map was for the recommended change. The outline in yellow shows, and I used yellow because I think that's the color on the dermographer's map here. You can see where that map ends on about 15th Drive. There's a wash on the back side of the homes on the southeast side of 15th Drive, and that was used kind of as that natural barrier boundary. And we had a zoomed out map and a zoomed in map that showed that ending there. There were some maps that circulated on social media that included these homes south of 15th Drive, taking Copperhead Trail all the way to 14th Lane. It's about an additional 55 additional homes. The committee has been discussing what their understanding of the recommendation was when they approved the recommendation on February 4th. And so I do believe that the board has heard from some of this from some community members. And so we just wanted to make, transparency has been listed as an issue from the community. And so we wanted to make sure that we were addressing this head on and making sure that the board understood which map was published on dvusd.org/boundaries and which ones you might have seen that came outside of that website. The next region that we took a look at was Boulder Creek High School. Boulder Creek High School, you can see that the schools affected for recommendations are going to be Anthem, Canyon Springs, and as mentioned previously, Sunset Ridge. You can see by the map, this is actually our largest region geographically, because what you can't see is where the New River boundary ends. We can't find a map quite big enough where you could read anything where you can include all of the New River boundary, which you can see there where a little bit of Canyon Springs and a little bit of New River include that eastern edge of Lake Pleasant. And then the New River boundary goes all the way up to the end of Maricopa County. So taking a look at the same metrics for Boulder Creek region, Boulder Creek has 6 K-8 schools and 1 K-6 school, and then of course 1 high school. So right now, Anthem School is below that 50% capacity at 39.2%. And if nothing changes, Anthem will be at under 30% capacity in 2035. Canyon Springs does have some room for growth still. They're at 70% capacity, but will be above that 80% capacity in 2035. Desert Mountain right now also is below that 50% capacity, currently under 20% capacity. But what's different with Desert Mountain compared to some of the other schools in the region is that they are projected to grow. There is a lot of growth there in Desert Mountain, certainly south of Carefree Highway where their boundary extends right now. And so we will see them at almost 66% in 2035. Diamond Canyon, Gavilan Peak, and New River hang below that 50% either now or moving into 2035. And Sunset Ridge, as we spoke previously, here's where you can see where they're at now, are already at that under 50%, and without any changes, they will be at just under 40% by 2035. So here's what we looked at. Canyon Springs, their boundary extends across I-17. There are many homes in that boundary on this eastern side of I-17 that are much closer to Anthem than they are to Canyon Springs. They're currently bused to Canyon Springs. And so what we looked at was only south of, for this map, only south of Anthem Parkway, and all the way down to, I think it's Joy Ranch Road on the southern end, going up against that Sunset Ridge boundary, and then the Anthem boundary would be returned to Anthem. This was a case where when Canyon Springs opened was when these students were moved over to Canyon Springs in their boundary. Thankfully, it's been a lot more time has elapsed from the opening of Canyon Springs. So this is, as far as moving frequently, this is not the same feel for the families in this area that it is for some of the other areas that we're talking about. But you can see above that if we make no changes based on current school enrollment, Anthem remains, if we look at school enrollments on the bottom half of this graph, enrollment remains below 500 students going into 2035. And Canyon Springs is coming up much closer to capacity, and we may even see more growth than that. These numbers only include growth that is, or developments that have already been approved by the city. And so we would actually expect potentially that Canyon Springs could be greater than that, right around 80% or just above 80% that we're expected to see in 2035. With the change, it is a little more balanced going out to 2035 with Canyon Springs still the larger of the schools, but you can see that Anthem is much closer to 500. And it may even be the difference between those numbers is that students that are close to Anthem may already be open enrolled at Anthem as opposed to busing to Canyon Springs. We did take a look at, we talked about this in the January 14th committee meeting, potentially including this entire area. This neighborhood as well, north of Anthem Way, is also Canyon Springs. It is a slightly more densely populated than the area south of Anthem Way. And so if you take a look at the option and what moving this option would do based on the current school enrollment is that the school that would be well below 50 to 30% would then turn into Canyon Springs, and Anthem would be closer to that 80%. And so again, we don't want to make any recommendation that would flip-flop the issue that we're having. And so when it came down to it, the committee voted not to include this area here above Anthem Way. We did discuss the potential then about 2032 is when this change may need to happen. So we talked about it. It doesn't make sense to do it now because we would have the same issue for about 6 years. But maybe in 6 years, this the long-range planning committee at that time might want to take a look at making that change then. And again, this is just a repeat for Sunset Ridge. So addressing the undercapacity issue at Sunset Ridge, taking a look at this section above Dove Valley and Carefree Highway between I-17 and the Desert Mountain border, moving them up to Sunset Ridge. And finally, the third high school region that was looked at for potential boundary adjustments was Sandra Day O'Connor High School. And because this region does have K-6 schools, whereas the recommendations for Barry Goldwater and Boulder Creek did not involve K-6 schools. We see a lot more schools impacted because you're going to impact middle schools as well. But we took a look at Desert Sage, as already mentioned, Hillcrest Middle School, Inspiration Mountain, Las Brisas, and Stetson Hills. And so this map, why this map might look a little different, as you can see in the background, that black overlay is the Hillcrest Middle School boundary. And so just for clarification point, Hillcrest Middle School resides in the Mountain Ridge High School region boundary, but its membership is split, with 50% actually belonging to Sandra Day O'Connor High School, that's Las Brisas and Desert Sage, and 50% from Copper Creek and Legend Springs belonging to Mountain Ridge High School. So with the 4 schools then that are specifically in the O'Connor region, Desert Sage is projected to be relatively steady, but a slow decline through 2035. Inspiration Mountain is going to have a slight decline as of now, but I think that that will change. And we'll talk about that more. Please pay close attention on this map to where the Stetson Hills boundary is. It is certainly the largest boundary in the O'Connor region, and it includes the presently uninhabited Biscuit Flats. We'll talk about that more in a couple slides further. But take a look at Stetson Hills and Las Brisas and Inspiration Mountain and Desert Sage. All of these schools have some recommendations for boundary adjustments. And the first we'll start with is the one we already discussed. This is the Pinnacle Heights development at 39th Avenue and Pinnacle Peak Road. And so none of these numbers have changed. It's just restated to show that it affects both Barry Goldwater and Sandra Day O'Connor High School regions. Another potential adjustment, this is unpopulated portions of Stetson Hills boundaries. So that's the one I asked you to pay close attention to. And it will affect future projections. The inspiration, and do I have a better map of that? All right, there's too many maps. What this would do is break up that uninhabited portion of that Stetson Hills boundary, basically north of Dean Hills. And so we would ask, Inspiration Mountain would go, oh yeah, it's the right map. The colors look the same from back here. I apologize, that's what's throwing me. So Canyon Springs, which we talked about, already has a large boundary. It actually comes south of Carefree Highway right now. We would recommend that it comes down to the 303. And what that does, mostly that does have some development happening, but that's where the first 2 large fabs for TSMC are. There's also a large commercial development east of TMC. Most folks are familiar with the Costco that's been approved to go in there. I think that's what they're most excited about. So we don't really think that Canyon Springs would see any students coming from here at this time, but I think it makes a more natural split for Canyon Springs. You can see in the red where Inspiration Mountain, that kind of ends right around Dean Hills now, and Stetson Hills boundary goes across, is just to take that straight north to the 303. So on the east side, that's roughly 51st Avenue, and on the west side, it would butt up against the current Terramar boundary. And then Stetson Hills, the part that would remain there is everything that's left. So it's I-17 on the east side to Stetson Hill, or to the 51st, roughly 51st Avenue on the west side, and then stop at the 303. And if you're familiar with some of the growth that has recently been approved for the area, there is a significant residential development that's recently been approved by the city. TSMC has purchased state land, and that is North Park. North Park is expected to be about 15,000 homes that were all, until this boundary change is approved, are all slated for the Stetson Hills region. And so what's also included in that development, the North Hills, TSMC and Pulte are reserving at least three slots for schools for Deer Valley. But two things to keep in mind. One, we just talked about the Boulder Creek region and Anthem. Anthem was originally 10,000 homes, and we just talked about the 4 K-8 schools and the 1 high school that are specifically in that area. And so this is going to be 15,000 homes with 3 school spots slated. 1 is a high school and 2 are K-8s. Not only that, but we previously talked about the district not currently having bond funds available, and that's the only way that we would be able to build those schools. And so we just wanted to get ahead of, again, when we talk about those multi-year changes, we wanted to get ahead of that. And so instead of, as those developments come in, if we don't have bond funds, we wanted to be prepared and not change folks from year to year to year. And so that is the recommendation for the uninhabited portions of O'Connor region. This is the inhabited portion of O'Connor region, and this is Inspiration Mountain in Las Brisas. Las Brisas is projected to remain under 50% capacity. And again, what happened with Las Brisas, if I understand correctly, is when Inspiration Mountain opened in fiscal year 23, there had been a recommendation for some boundary changes between the high school regions and who would come to Inspiration Mountain, and bringing some other folks down to Las Brisas. And that portion of the plan was not improved, and so Las Brisas lost over 40% of its enrollment in 1 year. So the year that, and it wasn't over capacity. And so that school has operated at under 50% capacity since Inspiration Mountain opened. And so this recommendation seeks to equalize those two regions a little bit more. And so you can take a look at this map here, that it's from Happy Valley Road north on the west side. It's approximately 56th Avenue, and then to the eastern boundary at approximately 49th Avenue would follow 55th Avenue up, basically to following Deem Hills Parkway, and end at the entrance to Deem Hills Community Park. And so that natural mountain then would be the border for that. It does include that small block that's currently at Stetson Hills that would come down to Las Brisas. And so for really big finance font, I know it used to be called Jim font, but here's a look of what that would look like. And because it's much smaller, we actually gave it its own slide so that we can see it a little bit better. But going to the school enrollment projections at the bottom, you can see with no changes, what's going to happen between those schools. And on the bottom, based on current enrollment, what we project instead. And so Inspiration Mountain will be at a more average capacity. We keep some folks in Stetson Hills, and then by moving those kiddos, Hillcrest Middle will remain above that 400 as well. And as opposed to lower 400s, they would be at the higher 400s with those kiddos going to Hillcrest Middle School instead of Inspiration Mountain or Stetson Hills for 7th and 8th grade. So the two regions that we did not mention, One of them is Mountain Ridge High School region. If you take a look at that enrollment to capacity comparison, they are going to remain relatively steady for the next, well, what was 10, now about 9 years. And I do think we will see changes in this. Amcor and other developments up Lake Pleasant Parkway, I think we'll see some additional residential that are not yet in the books. And so to avoid multi-year changes over and over, and to try and listen to the community, we're not recommending any changes to that region at this time. We do think closer to 9-10 years that may need to happen in the future. And then Deer Valley High School region, they have a different, they're exactly the opposite. They are all closer to or under 50% capacity with a little bit of growth, but there are no schools, there's nowhere within that district to move the boundaries where you can equal out that enrollment. So we call it the Long Range Planning Committee. It doesn't end with our March 10th board vote on that. There will be work moving forward. So that concludes my portion of the presentation. If approved on March 10th, we would take March 11th through August 26th for August 2026 for formal notification and transition planning. And as a reminder, these are all the ways that you can contact us, find out more information, or have input in the process.
Thank you, Ms. Mock. Governing Board. Dr. Pack?
I have some questions, but I'd like to let somebody else go first.
Okay. Mrs. Fisher, you still with us?
Ms. Fisher, are you with us?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm muted, sorry. Well, you know, I guess one of my biggest frustrations is we've gone through this before, and it didn't happen this way. It didn't all of a sudden just be a presentation and a done deal and whatnot, or what seems to be. I'm concerned this is a work session, not a study session. The board needs to hear from the community. I mean, we get it in emails. It goes back and forth, and then we some of us get it verbally and other ways as well. And our community seems to be very concerned with the way this is being done, and it casts doubt. Where I'm a little bit concerned is I want to know, are we using our actual ADM or are we using weighted ADM? Because every time people talk about our ADM, they're talking about weighted ADM, or they're including our preschool and kindergarten, which we're not funded for. And so I understand that there will be changes. Just think about where you were 10 years ago to where you are now. There will be changes. There's always going to be changes. But we have to also consider the little people that we have now and what is the impact going to be to them. Are we going to lose generation in certain ways because we're planning for someone 10 years from now? And I think that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing from parents, is they're concerned that their little one or their elementary student is going to be harmed by this. And I do question, why is it being pushed so fast with so little discussion?
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Just real quick before we keep going on down the line, I want to interject something real quick for everybody. I know that there's a lot of concern about how many times are my kids going to have to change boundaries. Now, a board, not this board, in 2019 had a conversation. And I looked at the demographer's information from back in 2019 with the proposals that were made, and I watched the meeting, and I'll be honest with you, I was severely disappointed in the board that was serving at that time, because the words that came out of their mouth was, we know that we're just kicking the can down the road, but we're going to decide to not make a decision. Now, if you look at the demographer's information from back then, and when we get to the Las Brisas piece, we wouldn't be having this conversation if people would have made hard decisions back then. So I just want the community to be aware that I feel for you. I'm concerned about kids having to move campuses a lot too, but kicking the can down the road, I don't think is something that anybody elects anybody to represent them to do. So whatever decision that we make, I hope that we don't make the decision to kick the can down the road, because 5-6 more years down the road, what does it look like then? So I just wanted to interject that. I don't know if my fellow board members are aware, the other three that are sitting up here, that conversation similar to this came before the board, and it passed 5-0 back then to not do anything. And I'll go ahead and stop my piece right there, and we'll continue on. Stephanie?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, but I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit because we went through so much. I just want to take a step back to May 25th when committees were selected. I've heard a lot from the community about, so what we saw on the presentation was that communities were selected. But when I approached questions about this a couple of months ago, I was told that the committee was already in place and that we have a committee that does this. So I'm confused on why would we have a committee selected, or why we would push that here. And then I would also hear from another source that they already existed. Can we explain the committee issue? I think it's really important.
President Carver, Ms. Simichek, I'm not sure I understand the question, but let me, at least I wasn't here in May when the committee was selected, and I know that's when the work started. The process for committee selection includes, typically it will come to cabinet. We say, okay, we've got this work team, this committee, whatever it is that's coming up. Who do we need to have on the committee? And when it involves parents, it typically then will include one parent representative from every high school region. We try to get balance between representation from K-8s, K-6s, middle schools as well. We can get that representation from committee members. It could, or from parent members. It could also be administrators that serve on the committee. And oftentimes we will include extra parents on the committee by having representatives from our parent organizations. Presidents, we will have one of those members represented on the committee as well. As far as how it was selected, that I cannot attest to because I just wasn't here. But it does follow the standard pattern of representation that we use for, say, our budget committee. And I think Dr. Gale could attest to her curriculum adoption as well.
Okay, so sorry, I got to follow up.
My understanding is that this is a standing committee.
Exactly.
And that we fill positions as positions come open, but that for the most part, this committee is in continual existence, just not necessarily doing work. Would that be correct?
I think, I know for curriculum, budget, boundaries, in general, yes. But I don't remember specifically on this one, but in general, that is how we do it. I know graduation is another example, calendar is another example that we have. And when people retire or want to leave or whatever, then we have a process to get them selected. I think the most important thing to remember about any committee that we do in Deer Valley is that it has representation from all the regions. The second most important part about committees in general is you form the committee before the problem. You don't start the problem and then form the committee because you'll get unbalanced committees. That's why you want a representation from all groups.
Can I continue? Okay. So for me, it is when I hear, I'm not really sure how this one came about, but this is how it's supposed to happen. That to me is the alarm, because we have a presentation here that says a committee was selected. And I'm sorry that I'm focusing on that so much, but it really is important, because then I heard that the committee is already selected and that we have these groups before a problem starts. But if we have a committee that's already in place and we're talking about, changes and schools that have been built in the last 6 years and all of these different dynamics that are going on within our district, why wouldn't we, if we happen to have the committee all in place, because I really am still confused on whether there was one that was created for this or we used one from a committee that we had before. But why would we not revisit, especially areas with growth and new schools being built, to adjust those committees and make sure that those committees do have a voice of everybody in the community? So I still, I feel like I'm not getting the question answered, but to me,
No,
it's
we
like,
can,
was
we can go find that for you.
the committee here before?
Yeah,
Because that's what you
I
had
really
told me
don't-
at one point.
I don't remember, but I know it follows the same process that we use for all committees. That I do know. But we can check for you and find out how it was formed. Frankly, I don't remember. I'm assuming it follows the same process as all the other ones.
Yeah, I have some other questions, but if we're on the same page, let's stick with this.
Yes, I just wanted to add to yours. I'm also confused because on the pretty little roadmap on the website, it says committee formed April 2025, and this presentation said May 2025. And I've also heard from community members who are in a school district that's not represented purportedly. So there does seem a lot to be confusion. So I didn't
Probably
wanna
that
interrupt you, but I
April
didn't
probably
wanna
is
forget
when
that.
it was
Thank you.
picked, and May is when they met, I would assume. Again, we can find this out for you. It's not easy, not hard to get. We can find it.
Yeah, I just feel like I've asked the question quite a few times without a real solid response. I have a question about when you do that, when the numbers are pushed out. So we have the current like attendance actual and attendance like current in the area. And the actual, when I look at a lot of the numbers, it looks like the actuals are actually about way significantly higher, right, than what the actual area is. For example, I had one that the current area was 741, but the actual attendance in the school was 874. And my question to that is that number higher because of open enrollment? Okay, so,
That is correct.
okay, great.
School
So-
choice.
Yes, exactly. I get school choice. What about though the people who live there? And that's my understanding with school choice is that when it's your home school, it's obviously it's automatic. You get your bus transportation, you get your school. When you open enroll, it is always, although we have choice, it's always limited to availability of that school. And so what I'm not really understanding is why are we not looking at those numbers and saying, well, technically, if, 2 years from now, we're going to be at this number, we have to, unfortunately, we need to either stop open enrollment or we're going to have to revisit those families and say, hey, this was the boundary. Unfortunately, we're at full capacity. We're actually heading over. And so we can no longer offer you open enrollment. Because to me, when you buy your home or, we heard a little bit about, people get attached to their mascots, but people get attached to their communities. And I've always been a loud voice when I share that. To me, communities are the heart. Our schools are the heart of our communities. And we build these communities with friends and neighbors, and our kids start to be raised together and have, do things together. And so it's not just a mascot. And so my thought is if we can allow open enrollment, let's just say, for example, this is over 100 kids difference. But yet the person who bought their home in that area, and when they bought that home, were told that they were going to be zoned for school, now is getting pushed out because the school allowed another 125 kids to come in as open enrollment. Does that make sense?
President Carver, Ms. Simachek, yes. And we do, our open enrollment is applied per governing board policy. And so part of that is tied to state statute as well, but certainly those are things that looked at. HR works with the schools to determine when a school needs to be closed to open enrollment because they can no longer service any new students.
Okay. I did see this happen with Sonoran Foothills. I saw a lot of open enrollment being allowed, and then at the same time they were growing way too fast. I saw a lot of open enrollment happening at Union Park, and then all at capacity or close to capacity. So I just don't, I'm trying to see why we don't look at that more. And I get the statute, but my understanding is that upon availability. So if we start to get to a point where a neighborhood's getting over, more people are choosing to go to that homeschool, they should have that priority, their homeschool, not the child who comes in from, a different area and says, I just think I want to go here. But that's my opinion.
Thank you, Mrs. Simichek. Mr. Botfeld?
I only have a few questions, just 5,682. The bottom line is, I have some suggestions that I'm going to give you regarding particularly the Union Park situation, which I believe is difficult in any respect and every respect. And to make it easier, I could be here all night asking these questions. I'll give them to you after we take a break. I do have one question other than that. The demography. Is the demographer here?
Yes, he is.
Who is here?
Rick Brammer from Applied Economics, Mr. Botfeld.
Nice job. My question is this. If you look at the Anthem area, it is aging enormously fast. What happens to an aging area when they leave? The young people come in. That area is going to change in the next 5 years remarkably. That's number one. Number two, from a demographic point of view, from a real estate point of view, you got 20,000 new housing units going into this district over the next 4 years. I realize that the housing unit doesn't mean children, but there will be no more children in the area. Has your demographer looked at that at all?
President Carver, Mr. Botfeld, I did state this briefly in the presentation. Yes, but what's included in the demographic study is the developments that are approved by the city. And the North Park, I think, was just approved by the city of Phoenix in December. So that would be in future demographic studies, if I understand correctly.
In that case, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Botfeld. Dr. Pack?
Yes, since this is a work study session, I would respectfully ask Mr. Botfeld if you could just, so I can hear what you're going to share with them later, because we might have some of the same thoughts or concerns or suggestions.
Can you just read them out loud?
Could you please read it?
You want me to read?
Your questions that you had.
Just so we know what you're asking.
All right. It's a little late, but here we go. Union Park problems. Number one, the proposed boundary for Fireside at Norterra Union Park suggests boundary at the intersection of West Copperhead Trail and North Mervyn Trail. Better represents both the community unity and the environment. Two, bisecting the enclave at Copperhead Trail Union Park, creates operative insufficiencies. There are 20 students involved. Copperhead Trail is a residential street, not a major arterial. And C, splitting this group affects A, children, and B, carpool networks. 3, the bus going to Union Park is near rezoned Norterra Canyon. Before and after, can we get the kids to get on that bus? And before and after school care is always difficult. And I'll give you this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Botfeld. Thank you. Thank you. Just some questions. I'll try to consolidate them. I think I heard that the last boundary change was in 2019, or the last proposed boundary change.
President Carver, Dr. Pack, that is not correct. It actually was when Inspiration Mountain opened in '23. That boundary was approved in '21. Deer Valley has never had an initiative like this where we do widespread boundary adjustments across the district. We typically have only adjusted boundaries when a school opened. So this is brand new for us.
Okay. Then also the demographer's report is, his most recent report is not yet available.
President Carver, Dr. Pack, I believe that one hit my inbox just this morning. I haven't even had a chance to preview it yet, but it is. And we will continue to work with the demographer as we move forward and look at other solutions to make sure we continue to use our facilities efficiently.
And following up on that, I watched the Zoom that you and your committee had before the public meetings, and that might have been brought up. I've consumed a lot of information, but I feel like as a board and as a district, we should be making our decisions on the most recent data. And while it may or may not be significantly different from his last report, I personally would like to look at the most recent data before I vote on something. So as soon as you get it in your inbox, it would be nice if we could get our eyes on it. Is that?
The good point. If you notice, demographer's reports go in tenure. So really what they're doing is his newest report is just moving the whole dial up 1 year. So I would guess that it actually is worse than we think. It's going to actually give us more kids because more has been approved in that year. So that's what she's referring to, because there's also developments that the demographer knows and I know and Heather knows because they are being talked about at the state meetings, and those are the ones we go to, but they're not approved yet. So he's only working with the ones that are approved.
And then also in that Zoom, I think, it was brought up or requested if there could be an additional public hearing because there was because of the hurriedness that it felt like to some people. And I think in that Zoom, it was mentioned that could be a possibility. So I don't know if that has been brought up again, if another public comment period could be had, since that combined with confusion with maps, et cetera.
President Carver, Dr. Pack, I think what you're referring to is one of the committee members suggested an additional survey. And so I don't know what else we would ask. We talked about it. We talked about it with the committee at our February 4th meeting. I don't know what other questions we would ask the community at this time, other than, do you like the proposed boundary change? And I'm going to guess, and it's not sarcasm when I say we would get a resounding no if we asked if folks approved of the boundary changes recommended.
Okay, let's see. One of the boundary changes is going to affect Spanish immersion students, and from many emails and also talking to the public, and always keeping students in my forefront of my mind always about making decisions, because while we are a business, we're in the business of educating students, so students are our customers. If we're asking Spanish immersion students, and the district has asked them to commit to a long-term embracement of learning a language, because it takes time to learn a language, it feels like we're letting them down by not keeping the district's end of the stick-to-itiveness agreement by not providing them transportation. And I know that they can still come to the Spanish immersion, but some kids will not have busing, and then that presents an inequity situation. I'm all about not mom network and carpooling, but sometimes those situations are not available to some families, and that would be a shame for that, even just one student not being able to learn his or her language that he or she's excited about, and one of the gems of our district having Spanish immersion. So that's very concerning to me. Is that something that's been brought up in the committee, and how can that be addressed equitably?
President Carver, Vice President Pack. In one of the community forums, parents did bring up that there are fellow districts that do have systems for transportation for signature type programs like immersion. We did talk about that at the February 4th committee meeting. And when we took just the tone of the committee for that particular topic, it wasn't a popular one from the committee members. That doesn't mean, though, that we are not doing due diligence and researching it ourselves. We've reached out to Scottsdale and Paradise Valley, who both offer opportunities like that for signature type programs. And so we are doing that ourselves to see if that is something potential. But you have to understand, then what does that mean for our Renaissance parents at Canyon Springs? Or what does that mean for our Renaissance kids at Las Brisas? Or many of the unique programs that we have, opportunities for kids and families. And as you've heard many times over the past 5 years, transportation, bus drivers are the challenge that we face. And so it comes down to, do we have the number of spaces on a bus as well as the bus drivers to have that? But I will say that both Heather and I have reached out to our contacts in those districts and have some information that we are looking at with Dr. Finch, Cabinet, but also we took it to the committee.
And then just to follow up on that, has consideration been given for, I forgot the term we used for the Mandarin, for aging them out? So if they're in the Spanish immersion program, providing them transportation until they finish through 8th grade, at least let the kids that are in it, that were asked to commit, who committed, let them finish, because they haven't even finished yet.
President Carver, Vice President Pack. We haven't necessarily talked about that. I understand for our current sixth grade kids who would be going into middle school, that's a concern, as it is for any of the grade levels. Completely understand that. We're talking about 35 kids in that area that would be moving from potentially Union Park to Norterra Canyon, and so those 35 kids, as you've heard, are grandfathered. That doesn't support or help transportation, which is why we are continuing that conversation.
Do we know how many kids of that 35, or how many kids of this whole boundary change actually ride the bus?
I am not
right
going
now.
I can't give that answer. I would imagine the 35 Spanish immersion kids that are in the affected area may indeed ride the bus, but we don't have confirmation of that.
Is that something we can get?
Dr. Pack, we can follow up with that, yes.
Thank you. Give me a second. Right. I do believe those are all my questions for now, but I also just want to share, and I know we'll have a regular meeting later, when parents have to get in their car and drive a kid to school, their child, their bundle of joy, and they're going to have to turn left to go to the school that the bus used to take them to. With the plethora of charter schools around, if they just turn right and go to that charter school, you're opening the door for losing students by not providing busing. And so that's a concern, because we have so many great programs in this district. But part of having so many great programs is continually supporting those programs to keep the kids in those programs, because Renaissance is amazing, Spanish immersion is amazing, but providing everything needed to keep those programs as great as they are is important. That's it.
I'll reserve my questions for you for the regular meeting, just a matter of trying to keep us on schedule, as we're supposed to start our governing board meeting here in the next minute or two. So If there is
President
no-
Carver,
Yes.
would you mind? I would like to take an opportunity to answer Mrs. Fisher's questions.
Yes, please.
She had asked about whether we're using ADM or weighted ADM. Neither. We use enrollment. Kindergartner for ADM and before ADM, right? ADM for kindergartner is 0.5 because the state funds it at a half. Like, we're looking at the bodies in the school building and not ADM at all. And so that's why that enrollment number is going to be a little different than ADM, because we know kindergartners are funded at half, even at, at high school level, some of those students don't count, or not don't count, but are not a 1.0 FTE, or at the K6, K8 level, if I'm not there from the first day to 100th day, my ADM is reduced as well. So when we're talking about that number, we're actually looking at the number of physical students in the building. And just wanted to clarify that all preschool is funded, but Ms. Fisher's correct that only developmental preschool is funded by the state, but Head Start preschool is funded by Head Start, and Community Ed preschool is funded by preschool. And so those are bodies in the building as well. And those programs are often considered on whether or not the school has space.
Thank you, Ms. Monk.
Mr. Garber.
Yes.
30 seconds. I just want to thank the community and thank the committee as well, as they continue to give us data to work on this decision. What I'm noticing, though, again, I've been doing this a long time, what I'm noticing this time that's different is no one is saying that we shouldn't do something, because they are looking out their windows and driving by that factory and are reading the same newspapers I am. And so it's not if Deer Valley is going to be impacted, it's to what scale. And so we are at this stage where we need to make decision soon. And if we don't, well, we could have, again, similar to what you said at the very beginning, the last board punted, and look at the problems that we have today. If we punt this again, we're going to end up multiplying our problems again.
There's no objection. I'd like the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Okay, we will reconvene at 7:10. If any of the community members have gold cards they would like to turn in for public comment during the regular business, you have until 7:10 to turn those in. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Tim, are you there?
Give us just 1 minute while we get Mrs. Fisher back online, please.
Hi, okay, so you can hear me? You can hear everybody? Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna mute.
I need to.
Okay.
Okay, hold on,
Okay.
I need to.
We're all good? Okay. I'd like to call tonight's meeting, a regularly scheduled meeting of the Deer Valley Governing Board to order at 7:12. Let the roll call show that all members are present, save Mrs. Fisher, who's attending telephonically. Dr. Zurbach, would you be so kind as to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence? Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second by Ms. Simichek. Ms. Taylor, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Am I voting for Mrs. Fisher?
I don't, take her
What
off.
is your vote, Ms. Fisher?
Is she on mute still?
Yeah, she needs to unmute, not you.
What is your vote, Ms. Fisher?
I'm trying to get into the system. It kicked me out. But just to adopt the agenda, go and vote aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Okay, she got disconnected. All I did was hit mute.
Okay, she'll call you back. So Mrs. Fisher is dropped. When she calls back in, we'll make that note. First item up on the agenda is item 2A, district reports, fiscal and business services. Ms. Mock.
President Carver, members of the board, guests in person and online. We have a couple of financial reports to review this evening. The first that we review is our M&O budget report for the month ending January 2026. At this time, we are projecting a small carry forward of about $600,000. We will keep a look at that moving forward. I've started to do our top five expenses for the year, and I will continue with that. Coming in at number one again is going to be our salaries and benefits. Salaries are so far about 58% of what's been spent to date, with benefits, all of benefits, not just health insurance, at about 28%. Of course, we do keep the lights on and the air conditioning going, and so utilities at just 5% of the total spent to date come in at number three. Number four is going to be continues to be our property and liability insurance, because we do pre-fund it at a little over 2%. And our transportation budget comes in next, followed last by our school discretionary. And you can see that the transportation discretionary budget, as well as the school and the facilities budget, are projected this time to be negative. This is a projection based on the current encumbrances. So neither of those departments or schools have overspent their M&O budget yet, but the projection would be if they spend every dollar that's encumbered on all the POs they have right now, it could be. And so we did have a question from the board, so I want to make sure all the board members know, and the public knows as well. What we do then is work with the facilities department, transportation department, and the schools, and we monitor those budgets closely through the rest of the year. We take a look if there are any expenses that could be moved to a different fund versus our operating fund. And lastly, something that we may need to do is request a budget increase for either one of those as we move forward into fiscal year 27. But with that wraps up the M&O budget report for the month ending January. I will take any questions on that specifically before we move into the student reports.
Any questions for Ms. Mock on this topic? Dr. Pack?
No questions beyond what I already asked. So thank you for that answer on the negative part.
Thank you, Dr. Pack. Anything further?
Ms. Fisher, do you have any questions? Ms. Fisher, do you have any questions?
Okay. Ms. Mock?
The other reports we have are the student activities report and our auxiliary report. So you'll see the month ending, the expenditures, revenue, and ending month begin revenues and expenditures for student activities, which those are monies raised by students for students to use for their clubs and at their own discretion. The auxiliary report, those are considered district funds, and those are things that are sold at the bookstore, monies coming in from the book fair, fees that we charge on behalf of the district, such as parking fees. It includes our athletic sales for those in the stands, things like that go into those funds. And we did have a question, so we'll talk about that a little bit as well, that one of our schools, not just this month, but more so the last 3 months and last year, had some negative balances in their auxiliary, not their student activities. And I don't want to publicly shame the school, so you can look at the report if you want to see who it is. I want to talk more about process and what we do for negatives in that case. And what happened in this case was the school actually ended with a significant negative balance at the end of last year. Historically, that's not been my practice. That's something we would work with the school during the school year, at the end of the school year, and during the encumbrance period to fix and correct. And so with the changing of leadership, we weren't able to do that by year end last year, but we're continuing to work with the school and getting it back on track so that they're operating from a good starting point to start with, and we have a better idea of what that 1 year looks like for them. But with that, I will take any questions on the student activities or the auxiliary reports.
Any questions for Ms. Mock, Dr. Pack?
Thank you for answering that question that I submitted earlier. Just to follow up, what policies or procedures are in place to avoid a school getting that far behind, like our parking passes not collected, or what? How can that happen, or how can we prevent that from happening?
President Carver, Dr. Pack, in this case, it was more specifically related to athletics. So it was a school that has much fewer spectators at athletic events, and so they didn't have enough revenue coming in to cover costs. And so those are things we work at and look at what other resources we can provide the school. And as I wasn't here last year, I can't really attest to what processes were used last year. But moving forward, those are the things we do. We look at it monthly, make sure everybody's in the positive, use all the resources we have available, and certainly try to fix it by the end of the year, because once you get past fiscal year end, it's much more difficult to fix. So we try to manage it within the year.
Thank you.
Anything further for Ms. Mock? Mrs. Fisher?
Any questions, Ms. Fisher?
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Anything further tonight, Ms. Mock?
President Carver, not at this time.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item number 3, Dr. Pack.
Give me a second. My computer
No,
encountered a problem.
She hasn't said it yet. It's okay.
Yeah, it says error. It's right there. There's a big error.
Consent agenda as presented.
Yeah. I move to, thank you. Got a lot going on up here. There's a lot of paper. I move that the governing board approve consent agenda items 3A through 3N.
Thank you, Ms. Simichek. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I'm back. Mrs. Fisher, what's your vote on the consent agenda? Hello? Hello?
I lost all sound for about a couple minutes. I didn't hear anything of what you guys said, so I'm gonna just abstain.
Okay. Abstain.
Because I heard none of it, I won't just vote.
Yeah, it was just me making a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Oh, my vote is nay.
Nay. Okay.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Next item on the agenda, item 4A, Ms. Mock. Well, okay, if you insist. And Dr. Pack, how about we do you first?
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve. And that's not it. Yes, approve the State Farm Stadium agreement with SMG for the 2025-26 graduation ceremonies.
Second, thank you, Ms. Simichek. Now, Ms. Mock.
President Carver, members of the board, we don't have a presentation for this one, just some brief information on this contract. Deer Valley completed a solicitation for graduation services in 2023. State Farm Stadium was awarded as the vendor for those services, but typically then every year as we receive the new contract, we bring the new contract to the governing board for approval, with last year being the exception. State Farm Stadium did not have graduation dates for us, and so we completed emergency procurement to use Desert Diamond Arena. But now we are back on track with State Farm Stadium. This is a regular occurring item for us.
Any questions for Ms. Mock on this topic? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ms. Fisher, is your vote? Okay, thank you.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Item 4B, Dr. Pack.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Passes 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Item 4C, Dr. Pack.
I move that the governing board approve all employee out-of-state travel for professional development per governing board policy GCCE.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Preview item 5A, Ms. Moffett.
Good evening, President Carver, governing board members, and Dr. Finch. This evening, we have 3 different contract types that we are previewing with you. The first is the certified contract, the second is the admin exempt contract, and the third is the deputy contract. As a reminder, each year we do take our contract language in for legal review. This year, there really were no substantial changes made, clarifications only. We have received some feedback as we have provided these contracts to you in our typical Friday update. So thank you for that feedback that allowed us to make some changes already for our final review. So you won't see them in front of you in these attachments, but I will speak to them. So starting first with the certified contract, we wanted the board to be informed that we are going to be making a change regarding the word teacher. We have many employees that work under the certified agreement and under the certified contract that are not necessarily labeled teacher. That could include a counselor, could include like an occupational therapist and so forth. So we felt employee would be the better word. That will be changed when these contracts are brought back to you for final review. Another change that you'll see that is pretty consistent as you move through all the contracts is the dates are updated. We do try to find other areas where we might see an exchange of a word like a teacher and an employee, and we make those corrections. Some things that are more I guess substantive would be paycheck withholding area. You'll see that our attorney recommended just clarification as they move. They are the same attorneys that review these each year. As they experience different issues with different school districts in their contracts, they do make some language adjustments, and that's what you see under paycheck withholding. And you'll see that that is consistent language from contract to contract. Another one that we agreed that needed to be changed is towards the end of that certified contract. You'll see that we added a section called reasonable assurance. This is really due to a trend that we haven't personally seen with certified or contracted staff, rather classified. Hourly workers, we've seen this happen, but I guess this is also a trend that they feel would cause us to need to include the language in the contract, and that is that they have reasonable assurance of continued employment. And what we have seen is that some employees are filing for unemployment during the summer months, stating that they don't have employment when they actually do have employment, even though they are off for that period of time. Eligible employees continue to take benefits and so forth, so they are seen as continued employment. We're just trying to emphasize that they do have that. Let me make sure I grabbed everything from that contract. Another area that was noted by one of our board members was the food and beverage clause. That is on the second to last page of the certified contract under the incidental food and beverage. This is a clause that we do want to make sure is consistent across all contract types. You will see that it was changed in the certified contract, but not in the administrative contract or the deputy contract. So we will make sure that that language is consistent across each contract type. The administrative exam, nothing to note here different than I already outlined in the certified contract. You'll see that we're trying to achieve that consistency in those areas across, and the same with the deputy contract. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Dr. Pack?
Thank you. Thank you for addressing the questions I previously submitted. Just because I'm new on the board, when you give an employee the contract, when do they have to sign it and return it by? By what date?
So our certified employees statutorily have 15 business days to return that contract. Also, it's important to note that a couple of years ago, it was statutorily changed that school districts cannot issue contracts until after March 15th. So for us, that means that we can't issue until March 23rd because we're on spring break during the 15th. So our first business day back would be March 23rd. For everybody else, administration exempt, they have 30 calendar days to sign the contract.
So when the employees receive the contract on March 23rd, they have however many, 15 days you said to turn it back in?
Correct.
When they turn it back in, is it enforceable with that last paragraph? When school starts, day one, July 1st, whatever it is, or is there some grace period is it a contract once they sign it on?
It is a contract once they sign it. So the board authorized or updated their policy on liquidated damages. And so if there are tiers, and I don't recall them off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to provide them to you this Friday if you're interested and if that's why you're asking. Our employees, if they break that contract early on, there is less of a fee than if they were to break it closer to the beginning of the school year. And that's true for administration and certified staff.
I would like that. Thank you. Thanks.
Any further questions for Ms. Moffett on this topic? Mrs. Fisher?
Mrs. Fisher, any comment, question?
No, not on these. I need to actually go through and actually read a little bit more of the detail. If I have questions, I'll send them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Thank you, Ms. Moffett. We appreciate your time tonight. Next item on the agenda, item 5B. Ms. Mock, has anything changed in the last 30 minutes?
President Carver, members of the board, and guests, yes, that is our typical spiel, usually when we talk about budget, from public hearing, or in this case, a work session to preview. Nothing has changed. We do have posted on the agenda the current recommendations for the boundary changes starting in fiscal year 26-27. This is what's posted on our website right now. It's very similar to the presentation earlier, only I will not talk for an hour. I will just remind you that Goldwater High School region has 3 schools affected: Norterra Canyon, Sonoran Foothills, and Union Park. Here's the overall view for that region: Union Park and Norterra Canyon, Sonoran Foothills and Sunset Ridge, and the currently Paseo Hills area with new builds going to Desert Ridge. Desert Sage, sorry. That's what happens when you talk for an hour straight. And the area that was not recommended, which is the southern end of Sonoran Foothills going to Norterra Canyon. Boulder Creek High School region, some minor adjustments between Anthem and Canyon Springs. And part of that adjustment that was not forwarded or recommended to move forward by the committee. Again, we just talk about Sunset Ridge and Sonoran Foothills. And we're missing, and this is included because of the Canyon Springs portion that would, that's currently in Stetson Hills that would move to Canyon Springs. So it is included in the Goldwater region presentation. And then finally, the Sandra Day O'Connor High School region. Again, that Paseo Hills, currently zoned at Paseo Hills, the new construction moving to Desert Sage. Some changes between Inspiration Mountain, Stetson Hills, and Las Brisas. And the presently mostly unoccupied boundary area for Stetson Hills, north of Deem Hills, being split between Inspiration Mountain, Stetson Hills, and again, Canyon Springs. And we'll take any of the additional questions we have.
Just real quick. I know we have some community. Good. Last slide, please. It says Terramar in the red hatched area. Is that supposed to be Inspiration Mountain?
Terramar it's currently, it's the Terramar boundary to the west. And
Okay.
so that's to designate that solid red to the left of the red crosshatch is the eastern Terramar border.
Okay, so on the left side of that solid red line is Terramar.
Correct, yes. But this entire area right now is Stetson Hills.
Thank you so much. And I
Yeah,
believe we have
absolutely.
public comment. So, Dr. Pack?
We shouldn't have any other questions since we heard it earlier, but do we take our questions before the public comment? That's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry. I guess I was mistaken there. I apologize. Since it's an agenda item, I thought we could do it a little bit differently. Okay, I guess just so the community is aware, I was just educated. The board should ask their questions of Ms. Mock before the community speaks, because we're not supposed to have back and forth with you all. So I apologize for that. Didn't mean to get you excited there prematurely. So if the board's okay, I'll go ahead and ask my question since I didn't at the last. So Ms. Mock, is there an Arizona revised statute that provides rules or guidelines for how we're supposed to proceed with boundary discussions and executing that?
President Carver, member of the board, and guest, yes, it is. I don't know it off the top of my head. What the statute states is that notification goes out to the public. Excuse me. And one of the things I didn't mention earlier is some of the communication that we've had through our parent newsletters, the parent update that comes from communications, but we also have a mailer going out to homes that would include folks who might not have kids in the district yet, but live in the district and might be affected. And that will be going out soon as well, but that is to fulfill that statutory requirement.
So do you know if that statute also has a timeline by which we're supposed to either execute the committee or notify the public, or both?
Not off the top of my head, but I will check that statute and determine. When I read it, I did not see a specific timeline in there, but without staring at it right now in front of me, I don't want to misspeak.
Okay, fair enough. Question regarding the Sonoran Foothills piece. Can you speak a little bit to the pros and cons of taking the northern section, which I assume is what a community member was referring to by the South Carefree Crossing, the pros and cons versus taking that piece versus the southern piece that was decided not to be discussed this time around?
President Carver, members of the board, because Norterra Canyon was already going to be receiving additional students from Union Park, it made more sense, because if you do not include that northern portion to Sunset Ridge, it will continue to decline to be in the 30% capacity. So we have another solution for Norterra Canyon, but we didn't have another solution for Sunset Ridge.
I understand, domino effect sort of a thing. Okay. We heard earlier this evening how we are bus route challenged as far as filling all the routes that we have. Last I heard, we're usually on average about a dozen routes short year to year, give or take. With these proposed changes, was there any research done to highlight whether or not there would be a reduction in needed bus routes, or if the number of routes would remain the same or increase?
President Carver, members of the board, we have not. Transportation has the proposals, but has not looked at what those routes would look like at this time.
Do they have an ETA for us on that?
No, but I can find out.
Okay, I'd appreciate that. That would help my thought process out anyway. And then the other, I'm sorry. Okay. My last note I have here is we discussed a little bit with the Spanish immersion piece, and I believe the number that was thrown out is we have 35 children that would be in the affected area for Spanish immersion. Is that correct? And if I understand it correctly, those kiddos have the opportunity to continue to come to Union Park to experience Spanish immersion, but transportation is the challenge. Is that right?
President Carver, members of the board, that is correct.
And Dr. Galligan, I believe, alluded to the challenge that we have and why we're discussing with our sister districts as to how they handle magnet classes like Spanish immersion when it comes to transportation is, where do you draw the line in which classes are we not going to provide that for? Would that be, is that correct?
President Carver, members of the board, yes. And I think that is part of the sentiment that we received from the committee as well. And so part of their hesitation, if I'm inferring correctly from what they stated, in moving forward, that if it was something that we looked at, that perhaps it would be temporary as opposed to a permanent fix like the other districts have done. And one of the challenges that we haven't even mentioned yet is some of the challenges that brings with student support services and students on IEPs and their open enrollment and whether you transport them as well. So we would have to make sure if we did something like that, one, we would have to change board policy, and two, we would have to make sure equitable distribution for all population types.
I understand. And the only other thing that I have up here is in discussing the Fireside piece, the line that we were talking about with the conflicting maps that went out into the community, the yellow line is the one that is being proposed, correct? That goes up through the back, in between backyards, so to speak, as some people have referred to it as. And then the other map that made it out into the world was the blue line that basically separated people from one side of the road to the other?
President Carver, yes, that is correct.
And what was, although I agree it's a better natural barrier, the way that it's drawn, I believe, but if you were to take that line down through the middle, do we know the number of children that are involved there? You said 55 homes. What's the count?
President Carver, members of the board, I don't have the student count. We could potentially find that out. We actually use our GIS data and transportation that can pull that up for us, but it would be minimal with it being only 55 homes.
And on a grander scale, I know that we've heard that there's a lot of community concern with maintaining community cohesion when it comes to the schools that they're going to. Can you speak to a little bit of why it's not possible to move Fireside as a whole or keep it as a whole?
President Carver, members of the board, size is part of it, and certainly proximity between the two schools. The schools are 1.2 miles apart, and I think it was easier in the earlier days of building schools in Deer Valley, right? We saw that map at the very beginning of the work session. It's a very nice crosshatch, as Phoenix is known for being very, specifically crosshatch, north, south, east, west. And the further north we get in our district, the more that disappears. And so neighborhoods aren't built in squares or perfect boundaries like they are in the southern edge. And so in this case, it's neighborhood size and proximity of the schools.
I understand. Thank you. Any further, Ms. Semichek?
Sorry. Can you elaborate on the proximity of the schools? Because we had been through this before when Union Park was built and when Sonoran was built. So can you just elaborate what you mean by that?
President Carver, Ms. Semichek, the two schools being 1.2 miles apart. So if you take a look at the map, they are almost north and south, almost exactly on the same kind of address line.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with it.
But the way then the neighborhood comes out doesn't make it easy to split up. So it's just being so close to each other with neighborhoods that don't have those clear-cut lines.
Did you guys visit Copperhead there? It really does it does cut Fireside in half still, but it's a pretty solid main road that ends up creating very much of a solid cut if you go to the rec center and just stop.
And President Carver, Ms. Simichek, the Copperhead Trail is at this time recommended as kind of the main road in that area to divide the homes. On the left, the west side, I should say west side of the map, it goes against the canal where Norterra boundary currently ends on the east side of its boundary. And then, and I can't remember which road it intersects directly. It may even be Norterra Parkway where it turns into Copperhead Trail and then follows Copperhead Trail down to 15th Drive.
I have to be thinking of a different road. What is the road it's not Melbourne, the road that you turn onto and there's gates on left side, right side, and then you run into the community center? Quail Track. Right? It is Melbourne, Copperhead and Melbourne. Okay, so it is Copperhead. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Ms. Simichek?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Dr. Pack?
Just more ask than question. If we could please have that statute provided and also the demographers report. And then if Dr. Smith can work his magic with the data and get us how many kids currently ride buses that will be affected by all these changes, and the ETA on the transportation that you had talked about, Mr. Carver, President Carver. And then one question I don't think has been brought up this evening. What about the kindergartners? There's the early kindergarten excitement and posters and advertising out. I've even shared it with family members and friends. Hey, go check out the kindergarten now, early, get signed up now. What about those kids that are signed up now?
President Carver, Dr. Pack, we have had those questions from some folks in the community. And right, it's a couple different questions. One of the questions is, which school do I go register at? The other is, which kindergarten preview night do I go to? The other is, am I grandfathered if my student is not in kindergarten yet? And so if you are not yet enrolled in the school, it does not qualify as that grandfathering, but we would work through our open enrollment process and to continue to keep any of those at that school.
And will the presenters, because I plan on going to one, will the presenters at those preview nights bring that up? Hey, audience, you might want to go visit the other one at the other school tomorrow night or whenever it is. So they're not assuming that the school they drive by every day, which has the sign, come do kindergarten preview March 5th or whatever it is that going to be brought to their attention in some kind of fashion?
President Carver, Dr. Pack, we do try to bring that to their attention. Really, it's going to be, if you're not already enrolled in the district, it's that mailer that you go to. We can certainly work with Mr. Kilgore and the team from communications and Dr. Zurbach and their team to make sure that those schools have a consistent message going out to their parents, or maybe on the marquee. There are things that we can do, and we will take a look at that.
Thank you.
Mrs. Fisher, anything from Ms. Mock on this topic?
Ms. Fisher, anything? Hello?
She's a little bit behind.
Sorry, I just had to, I was slight delay. I had to, get off the tablet to be able to hear you, 'cause there's a slight delay from one to the other. We've had the same problem, like for 15 years, where people say, I drive by Desert Ridge and I have to go to O'Connor, or I drive by. Aren't we just recreating the same mess? I mean, I question if we've really kind of thought all the angles through and all the possibilities through, because the parents keep bringing up really good points. And the question is, why? What's the urgency today? And I know Mr. Carver said, well, we kicked the can down the road. No, there's just a lot of schools we didn't kick the can down the road. And then they said, these are the unintended consequences of y'all's decision. Like Las Brisas, for example, the unintended consequences of pushing it through. And there has not been thorough discussion, a thorough conversation between the board and the community. So I guess I have a lot of questions, but there are too many to even ask at this point, because it's the first time that the board has discussed it at all. So I'll just go with that.
Dr. Finch?
Yeah, the answer to that question in general, that's the nature of boundaries. Anytime you move a boundary, you're moving students. So yes, you're always going to have interested parties, anybody that's being moved. As I said in the work, no one is saying you shouldn't do this. They're all saying just don't move my kid, move somebody else's kid, and that's pretty normal. With this, it happens. Remember, this is my third or fourth boundary discussion, and they all were the same and had that same concept, but this one's different. It is, everyone recognizes that TSMC is real, and all the houses that are around it are real. And I just talked to the demographer as he was walking out, and I think I commented to you, Dr. Pack, about this. The numbers are actually lower than the ones he even puts on paper and the ones you see, because it's only those things that are approved, not on schedule, that are on the state thought process. So Pulte won't even be a part, probably won't even be a part of these new numbers as well. So he said there's sewer and water. Again, I've been in these meetings, and so has Heather with the state. Water and sewer are their two main issues. And as soon as they figure those out, they have to build 2 new stations to handle that. But actually, the numbers are they're going to be faster, and they're going to be greater than what we think. And so this is the time to do it, is kind of the Ms. Fisher's question. Is like, well, should we wait? And the answer is we can't wait. We did punt it in 2019, 2021. As you mentioned, you listened to the video, and that's exactly what the board member said, is all we know is we're just kicking the can down the road, and we'll worry about this later. Well, we're running out of road. Yeah, but it's that's from south. Yeah. Correct. In the last 4 years. Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but you got to remember, where is it declining? It's the zone south. You didn't have the numbers in front of you, because obviously you were different location maybe, but many, specifically Union Park and Sonoran, are going to be way over capacity, really fast. And they're already, I argue, they're over capacity today. Ms. Mock talked about that. When a demographer says 80%, I think that's full because it impacts playgrounds, lunchroom, parking, fill in the blank. 100% capacity means they are way over what they're supposed to be. Because remember, they take gyms, cafeterias, hallways, and they all throw that in that number of space. So we have a problem today, and we're going to have a bigger.
They're taking numbers from June of 2021. So when we look at the demographer's report, it's old. We need new numbers, and we need to consider things that have happened between then and now, and how they have made such a difference. If we don't balance the schools, what's going to be the next conversation that we have? Because we're picking and getting a piece here, a piece there, that will be over capacity in 10 years, but we're not taking into consideration the school that, who's going to be the one that goes to one of the checkerboard schools and says, we're going to close your school. Because that's the next conversation when you're not taking into account balancing our schools. And that's not a discussion that's even taking place.
Right. That's what the committee is charged to do. And that's what the committee has done with the demographer's number, is to look at the demographer's projections. Remember, demographer does 10-year increments. So his last data that he gave us was 24-25, and he has brand new data just came in today for 25-26, but it's in 10-year increments. So we each year they just update it, and I just talked to him 1 hour ago right over there, and he said, my numbers that I'm giving you are even going to be lower than what I give you, the ones that we just sent in. So, and it's going to go faster. If you remember, Anthem, they said 20 years it would take to develop. It developed in 9. The exact same thing is going to happen here. It's going to take off quick.
Dr. Pack, if I may, a couple of questions as to why the appearance of speed. I know that there's been a lot of educators concerned about, well, what does this mean for me? And the net difference in children is 0. It's just where they are. So we need to get this done sooner versus possible, so that we can let people know where we need them. Instead of signing contracts now, letting somebody know that they're going to work at school A, and then this happens over the summer, and we put it out there, and now people don't know because it's summer break and you're disconnected from that, and then teachers have already set up their classrooms, and then we stir the pot. So, I mean, the reason for wanting to try to do this, if it's something that the board wants to do, is simply because to try to accommodate the need for the children where they will be instead of where they are not. And for those of you that aren't aware, without getting into the weeds, I also sit on the North Gateway Village Planning Committee. And for many of you in the area that you live, that is the Village Planning Committee for the City of Phoenix that helps steer the development, hopefully, because they don't have to take our presentations. But I can tell you that the number of applications for apartments and for houses and everything is just going through the roof. And so we're trying to be proactive. And to Mrs. Fisher's point, you're right. The schools that are in the greatest amount of trouble, as we saw by looking at the Deer Valley High School area, is the southern region. But we need to manipulate the northern region in order to try to make room in the southern region if we're going to do anything. But the biggest challenge now, the schools that are at capacity or in some cases have a waiting list, are in the northern area. And if we are able to find a way to balance it out and create availability, there are people waiting in line for our high schools, hundreds of applicants deep in open enrollment to try to come to Deer Valley Unified because it's such a good district. So if we could get some of our higher performing, and even to the point made earlier this evening, it doesn't matter how congested the school is, they're all performing really well. But if we could make availability, I think we would continue to see our numbers decrease at less of a rate than our sister districts. And to that point, we've discussed in previous meetings that while other school districts are closing schools, sometimes by the half dozen batch, and they're declining in enrollment in some cases of upwards of 20%, we have an aggregate declination of enrollment of approaching 5% over the last 5 to 6 years. So we are decreasing the least out of everybody around us, and we are the district that has the availability to increase because of the open real estate that we have for housing. So we need to be proactive, I guess, is my point, and looking towards the future and what does that look like, so that hopefully we're not inconveniencing more families and more children than what's needed in order to get everybody the best possible education and to avoid portables on the grass and all that other kind. I could go on all night. Dr. Finch, you have something to say?
Yeah, no, you hit where I was going to go as well. But to answer Ms. Fisher's point, the next adventure will be to look at maybe repurposing some schools. So that is in our future. Again, with the same thinking that we need those schools eventually, but we can, for using our facilities more wisely, we can consolidate some. So we'll be looking at that. We won't be closing schools, but we may be repurposing them. It turns out, code, if you take a student out of a building for 3 years, then you have to bring it up to modern code in year 4. So that's why you want to keep students of some kind in your buildings. And so we'll need all of our buildings and more in 2035. That's obvious. So the last thing we want to do is close schools. So, but that will be something that the committee or a new committee will also have to look in the future.
Well, just in the wise words of the famous Dr. Tweedy, I just have to repeat her that it is irresponsible to not look at all of them and make decisions that way. It sounds like we're heading towards building more buildings without adjusting for the undercapacity. So just my 2 cents. I'm going to go ahead and mute.
Actually, that illustrates the point. Yes, we are balancing the buildings for that purpose. Should we not be able to build buildings, that should help us buy more time. If we don't, Houston, we have a problem.
Dr. Pack.
Real quick, has any discussion happened in the committee? I keep hearing this, the last board punted, and I keep hearing we need right away. Is there something in between punting and passing, like another? We have a board meeting on March 10th and March 24th, and the contracts go out March 24th is what I think I heard. If there was, I'm not saying delay it, just not punt it, but what about giving a little more time for the public to comment, for the board to absorb, to get data that we didn't have? Has any conversation been had on the committee as far as delaying it, even in a small amount?
President Carver, Dr. Pack, if we delay the decision past March 10th, we would not be able to vote on it at all. It would severely handicap HR in the process for staffing, and they would have to continue staffing with our current boundaries. I don't know if Jenna wants to speak on this anymore, but March 10th is the date that we would have to have that. And again, we had 3 different opportunities for community input, including the survey, which is something that's never been done before, the community forums, getting the note cards back from the public. We stayed during the community forum to answer all the questions out loud. The forum at Barry Goldwater High School was over 2.5 hours. We've had the communication through school newsletters, specifically targeted to those schools who are impacted, to all of our parents. We've got the mailer. I don't know what additional communication or feedback that we would get by keeping it open longer, other than more individuals continually repeating the same concerns that we've already received. I don't think we would receive anything new.
I think another piece to add to that, just to reemphasize it, the March 10th decision, thumbs up or thumbs down, On March 11th, that's when we meet with principals and start, if a decision was this way or that, we can now make projections. So Mrs. Jones will know, and teacher X at that school will know where the potential for growth will go, potential for shrinkage will go, and then that will help them, principals, start making their schedules, start talking to teachers, et cetera, So then on March 23rd, after spring break, those contracts will come out and we'll be able to give staff some wisdom with where it's going versus waiting. And then we'd have to do that again after March. And again, staffing determines the size of your building, if that makes sense. I don't know if I said that correctly, but Jenny, want to add any more to that? We're behind schedule already, I guess is my point.
Dr. Finch, President Carver, governing board members, we are behind schedule in the sense of what we typically do each year. We typically hold our staffing meetings with each campus in January, and we start the staffing process in February. So we won't start staffing meetings with campuses until next week on February 24th. And then the official staffing process, where reassignments and things like that can start occurring, will start on March 12th. So about 2 days of reassigning can occur before we go into spring break, and then contracts are issued. So certainly our teachers would like to know what the landscape looks like before they sign their contracts, but I just want you to be aware that some staffing does begin even in advance of issuing contracts.
I'd just like to add, back in the day, those of you in the district a long time, when there was a giant growth spurt in what's the southern part of our district, Constitution had double sessions. There was thinking outside the box what they had to do at the time. And so double sessions, portables at Deer Valley High School, I'm sure you remember. I'm just hoping and wondering if all possibilities have been explored besides moving kids, because it affects kids.
Can I say something?
Yes, Ms. Simichek.
Thank you, Ms. President Carver. To me, when I hear all of this, to me, it's kind of supporting the idea that we're going too fast. I don't know if anybody else sees that, but this idea that we have to make these decisions like right now, I understand we had 3 committee meetings, but what I'm hearing from people who attended those meetings was that they shared what they wanted to share, but there was nothing came back after that. Like when they let's say boundaries were discussed or things were discussed, when they went back to the next committee meeting, it didn't really feel like the motions were there and they were going through the motions, but their voice wasn't really being heard. And so when I hear we have to decide this on the 10th and we're already behind by 2 months, it's like, well, then maybe we should hold off another year. Why are we not slowing this process down, getting all bringing in a community bringing in a committee of a community that feels like they have a real voice here? Because I've received some text messages now saying, well, I know how the committee thing goes, and they're sending me, what they've experienced, but nothing goes together. Nothing is fitting. I cannot get a straight answer of how this committee was formed. And all I know is that I do know people who signed up for the committee were literally told the next day it was full. I've asked questions about that. I was told the committee already existed. Then I see that the committee now was put together. So I can't, it's very hard to support something or even look at an entire major decision when the answers are still not even clear. And what I'm hearing too is we've requested some things and it's well, we don't have that yet, or we're still waiting for that. But then yet we're expected to make this major vote in our community. So that's my 2 cents. And I think that we just need to take a step back and then kind of look at what our people and our community are asking of us.
What she said.
Thank you, Ms. Simichek. Dr. Finch?
You want in? Well, I don't disagree with what you're saying conceptually, but we know if we did this for a year or 2 years or 3 years, we'd get the same answer. We know what the problems are. We know what the data says. So it boils down to Do we want to deal with the decision today, or, as the last board did, kick the can down the road? There are consequences with kicking it down the road. In the future, we would like to go again out for a bond in the future, and every day that we put this off just creates more strain on the machine, more strain in the system. So we know what the answers are. We know what the problems are. We know what the solutions that we can fix, the ones we can't. We knew that pretty fast. This is not our first rodeo. We figured out what the questions were going to be before they even came. So remember, this is what I do for a living. This is what I do every day. I've been a superintendent for 27 years. So I think about this every day. That's my job. And so I know that if we delay a year, we're going to be sitting right back here asking the same questions.
I would just like to add, I know it seems to be the biggest concern is that everybody wants more time. I guess in my mind, without being any particular way, is I knew from the time I got on the board going on almost 4 years ago now that we were going to have this kind of a conversation. And I've been thinking about it on a fairly regular basis, even though I don't draw the map, even though I don't run the committee. I needed to come to the realization that this was a necessary evil because, as we discussed a minute ago, districts around us are closing schools. And no matter what decision it is that we make, there's going to be an element of the community that's going to be unhappy with us. And that's an unfortunate thing. And sometimes I think I look at things too analytical, maybe because of my business background, but I would rather look at the folks that are going to be inconvenienced, whether it's through busing or whether it's because they go to a different campus. That number is going to be much smaller than if next year we had to close 3 or 4 schools. And then to everybody's point that has talked about the growth that we're going to go through the next 5 to 10 years, there's a really good chance we're going to need those schools in a few years. And if we close them, we'll need a bond in order to reopen them because of all the money that's going to need to be spent in order to get them up to code. So this is a really somber thing that we're having to discuss. It's not an easy thing. It's not a fun thing. And believe me, my heart goes out to everybody that has a concern about it. I don't know what the answer is. Like I said, sometimes I think the business side of me, or maybe it's the Marine Corps side of me, is just, it's something that has to be done. We're not going to find a perfect solution. Maybe we just rip the bandage off and get busy and see what it looks like moving forward. And I'd hate to put it like that, but sometimes, I don't know what the right answer is. You heard me ask some of the questions of Ms. Mock, why this block instead of that block? Why this road instead of that road? And at the end of the day, it's about numbers. And something that's been kind of missed, rather, when it comes to the demographers' numbers, we've talked about it for many meetings leading up to this one, is we have demographer numbers all the time. And Deer Valley exceeds those numbers on a regular basis. I think this is the first year that we've been close to the numbers that the demographer gives us. Usually we've by far surpassed them. And so if the numbers are already saying X for Deer Valley Unified in 5 years from now, you can probably bet that we're actually going to be significantly above that. So what does that look like? And you all saw the numbers. Some of our schools are going to be approaching 200%. And they're unfortunately the schools that are going to be impacted the most with this decision. And I just wanted to share some of those thoughts. It's not fun. It's not easy, but we've got to try to figure out a way to get this done where hopefully it causes the least amount of disruption to the system, to the children, and to their educational experience. Does anybody else have anything?
Yes, I have.
Yes, Mr. Botfeld. Sorry, I didn't see.
I have one question. What's to prevent us from accepting this on March 10th and then sitting down and continuing the process?
President Carver, Mr. Botfeld, that is actually the plan, and I think Dr. Finch alluded to that. The committee's work is not done. Long term.
Thank you, Ms. Mock. And anything further before we get to public comment? No? Okay. No, Ms. Taylor? Okay. Dr. Pack.
The board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any specific. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum. Speakers must fill out a card listing name, address, and topic and hand it to the board secretary prior to the president calling the meeting to order. Speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes. If necessary, to accommodate all speakers within the 30-minute overall limit, the board president may shorten each speaker's time. Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting personal dignity are not in order and will not be allowed. Under the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or act on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism made by a speaker, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. If I can please have Carolyn Cole, Brian Elam, Tani Hernandez, Carrie Linney Albuquerque, and Jeff Rattay approach the microphone, and please state your name before you speak.
My name is Carolyn Cole. I have 4 kids in Deer Valley Unified School District, the last of which is going to start kindergarten this coming year. I'm specifically talking about the Union Park boundary. I feel as if a lot of our issues are being flippantly spoken about. There have been a few comments made, such as people are attached to their mascots, things along those lines. I think those very much downplay the severity of some of this for our kids. I'm not a stranger to school changes. My daughter, who's here tonight, was at a charter school for the first 5 years of her schooling, and she had a terrible experience there. And I moved her into Union Park when it opened in 2020 because she was going to not have the same kind of issues transitioning as she would have going into a classroom where children knew each other from the very beginning. And her brother started kindergarten that same year, which, if you'll recall, was 2020. That was the year of starting school on a computer and going to in person with masks. And he is now going to go into 6th grade this year. So I also feel as if they have said a few times that the section that we are in is only doing a return to Norterra Canyon. That is not true. My specific neighborhood, which is Dynamite Mountain Ranch, the Stonebridge area, will now have gone to all 3 schools and will have the 4th change in 12 years. We started at Norterra Canyon. Yes, in 2015, when Sonoran Foothills opened, our neighborhood was scooped into Sonoran Foothills. And then when Union Park came, we were scooped back down into Union Park. We are the farthest corner of Union Park's district, so I understand that I'm asking for a lot here. But I think it's incredibly important that we understand that there are psychological effects to these kinds of changes for kids, and there will be families that cannot make this choice, that do not have any choice because they don't have the availability for a parent to be available to take the kids to and from school. My own family will have to make very hard decisions. I hope that at the very least we can understand that these children that started kindergarten in 2020 deserve to be able to get through their entire schooling through 8th grade. And I hope that you'll understand that even though I know that that means we're kicking the can down the road, I think 3 years is a reasonable request for these children to be able to get completely through their schooling. Thank you.
Good evening, President Carver, Dr. Finch, and members of the board. My name is Brian Elam, and I'm a Fireside resident. I'm a taxpayer and a partner in this district's success. I have knocked on doors and walked miles and miles to convince voters that this district needs funding. I canvassed personally for members sitting on this board today. I did that because I believed in your vision, and I believed you would protect the stability of the families who built this district. Dr. Finch, you keep referencing data and growth trends, but I don't hear anything from you showing concerns for the actual kids. Data doesn't sit in the classroom, children do. Dr. Finch, managing growth is your job, but our job as parents is to protect our children. I appreciate Dr. Pack's comments because she actually showed concern for the direct impact on the students. Forcing a student to change schools in 7th or 8th grade and disrupting an elementary school's final year is uniquely tough. School is their social, emotional foundation, not a data point. Ms. Simachek and Ms. Fisher have expressed that this process is rushed. Ms. Houck and Ms. Moffitt admitted the March 10th deadline is to accommodate the HR department. What is the priority here? Is it the HR department or is it the children? The boundary committee's makeup was opaque, with no representation from Union Park. Parents do not trust the process. You are rushing a life-altering decision without genuine community input to satisfy a hiring schedule. I want to talk about the human cost. Amelie, my daughter, she's on the student council. She's trying out for the basketball team. She's proud to be a Toro. My daughter Charlotte is in 7th grade. She's finding her voice in band with Mr. Kievert. To disrupt that mentorship now is a cost she shouldn't have to pay. And Beckett just joined band. He's thriving on the trombone, and he's finding his place. I see 3 logical paths forward. The pause, delay the vote for a plan that actually includes Union Park parents on this boundary committee. A compromise, perhaps my neighborhood is cut off in the enclave where they drew a line right between the neighborhood. Some of those folks we go to school with are right over there. Include the enclave in the Union Park boundary. Or the third option is guarantee busing. If you're going to displace these kids, the district must guarantee busing to Union Park. Anything less is an abandonment of working families. I've walked miles for you. I've knocked on doors for you. Now I'm asking you to protect my family. Let's take the right action for our kids.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Tawny Hernandez, and I'm a Union Park parent. My son is in 3rd grade Spanish immersion. We live in this northern little section there of Fireside, and my son is thriving in Spanish immersion. It was important for us for him to participate in this program, as my father-in-law, who has passed last year, is a Cuban immigrant. So it's an opportunity for my kids to have some of that culture that they otherwise may not get. I also have an incoming kindergartner this fall who we have registered for Union Park and been accepted into Spanish immersion, but there still is some concern whether without transportation or busing, my son is one of the 35, if there are in fact 35, and he rides the bus every single day. My husband and I are both working. I work in higher education. My husband is a wildland firefighter, and we don't have family support here. And so the bus is vital for our family. And something I think maybe was just briefly touched on, but aftercare is a huge concern at Union Park. It's been full every single year. In fact, there's a waiting list. The last 2 years, my son, I switched jobs. My son is able to ride the bus home from school, and I felt really proud about my ability to give up a spot to someone on the wait list who really needs it as a working parent, because I definitely needed that in the first 2 years my son was there. With an influx of parents now, I mean, we'll have to go back to aftercare. I'm concerned that now I'm taking up a spot that I wouldn't otherwise need to take up. We were told in one of the community forums that Spanish immersion, Union Park is in a really unique situation. Normally, a language program is meant to draw families into the school, and we have the opposite problem here. I implore you to really take some time, think about the families not only that are being inconvenienced, as it was put earlier, but providing time for more options to be laid out for the Scottsdale and PV school districts to get back on busing and really allow for an educated decision.
I'll use some of my time for this, but thank you so much to the parents who spoke out today. I know that it's definitely not easy to stand up here and advocate for your loved ones.
Please state your name.
Yeah, my name is Carrie Lenny. I'll be switching gears. I'm actually going to talk about the actions that have taken place in the Deer Valley Unified School District. It has been 18 days since students at Barry Goldwater High School walked out of their classrooms, and 11 days since Mountain Ridge High School followed suit. When administration learned that students were organizing, they did not initiate dialogue. Even now, after the fact, they still have yet to. Instead, they sent emails warning of consequences. At Barry Goldwater High School, student athletes were told that they would be removed from their teams if they participated. And still, they walked. We walked. I understand that Arizona mandates a nonpartisan school board to protect education from divisive politics. I respect that intention. Education should not be a partisan battlefield. But we do not have the luxury of pretending education exists outside of politics. When policy decisions directly dictate the quality of our classrooms, the resources available to our teachers, and the safety and dignity of our peers. Just as I did last month, I stand before you to ask you to try harder when it comes to protecting our students. Put us first and your peers second, and stop waiting for harm to be formally placed on your agenda before you acknowledge it. You know what is happening in your schools, so care enough to speak publicly when something affecting students is wrong, to send district-wide emails informing families of their rights and the resources available to them. That's the absolute bare minimum. Or to create spaces outside of the 3-minute window reserved for public comment, where students and parents can continue to speak out about these issues. If you will not lead, we will continue to organize. And I also want to remind you that what you do here at the school board really does matter. Even though we walk the streets protesting federal enforcement, what you do here matters at the local level, and all eyes are on you as school board members. Thank you.
I will now ask the next 5 people to approach the microphone. Brielle Wells, Megan Patel, Josh Almond, Marissa Flynn, and Lindsay Beckman.
I don't know how this works. There.
Is he on the list?
You're up there, Mr. Ate.
Sorry, I jumped again, but I want everybody ready.
You can just leave the mic in there.
My name is Jeff Ratte. Good evening, board members. As you know, the district decided to outsource the hiring of subs, known as guest teachers, to a private company called Educational Services Incorporated. These people are not educators. They are profiteers and opportunists. Their only job is to provide warm bodies to fill teaching vacancies. I was hospitalized for a seizure, specifically hypoglycemia or severe low blood sugar. 3 days later, I was heading for a sub-assignment at Mountain Ridge High School. I should have canceled as I felt terrible. During first period, I passed out in a classroom. My primary care physician at the VA later described this as a medical emergency. An administrator in the office assumed I had dozed off. She sent a person to escort me off campus. While I was leaving, I was pleading to talk to Mr. Hendricks about my medical condition. She said he was in a meeting and would call me later. The nurse was never called, and I was literally thrown out into the street. I was summoned to the district office at 7 a.m. the next morning. Mrs. Bushnell informed me I was terminated and refused to discuss my medical situation. She informed ESI, and I was banned by them from substituting in 63 school districts in Arizona due to a medical condition, not performance issues. After conducting an investigation, Dr. Finch concluded that during the 10 minutes that I was unconscious, the kids were unsupervised, and that became a safety issue. I later had a Dexcom installed, which monitors my blood sugars 24 hours a day. There's a 0 chance of a relapse. To his credit, Dr. Finch approached ESI on at least 3 occasions to get me reinstated. Each time they told Dr. Finch to get lost. But here's the kicker. I received an email from Dr. Finch stating that the district lawyer told him that apparently the contract with ESI dictated that Dr. Finch relinquished all rights to determine what guest teachers would be in the classrooms. In other words, ESI has the final say. According to your lawyer, Dr. Finch is no longer running the school district. The vendors are. As a side note, Scottsdale and Paradise Valley hire their own substitute teachers. I work for Paradise Valley. Mr. Carter, you practically did headstands at the last meeting to try to convince these board members to allow you to be president for another year. But words are cheap. ESI threw Dr. Finch under the bus. They threw Jenna Moffett, your assistant superintendent, under the bus, and they threw a disabled veteran teacher under the bus. Who will stand up for us? This is a very doable option. According to Mr. Dawson, the person in charge of certified personnel at Paradise Valley, they have a surplus of over 700 substitute teachers.
Hi, my name is Brielle Wells. I am a parent. I have 3 kids at Union Park in the immersion program. I have 1 kid at North Terra Canyon in preschool. I wanted to first address a few issues that came up today. I appreciated Stephanie's comments about forming of the rezoning committee that we still don't really have answers to on how that was formed. There is confusion. The Sandra Day O'Connor High School representative has a child at Sandra Day O'Connor but doesn't live in that region. So we're confused on how is it made? Is it on where you live, or there's just a lot of confusion based on how that committee was made. But regarding transportation, yeah, we don't even have that data used to make these decisions. I've called transportation. I talked to 2 different people. They said the district should have that data. Another guy said they haven't requested it yet. At a rezoning committee, they asked for that data and it hasn't been given. So again, we don't have the data necessary to make these monumental decisions. The map issue, I was directly involved with that. This process has been so rushed that there wasn't even a clear map given before the committee voted to present the map to you guys. The map you see has street names on it. That was not given until after February 4th. So of course there's confusion when that boundary goes through a neighborhood and there's not street names. There was confusion there. The community, I think, understood it, but there was a committee member who had already voted on that map, but she misunderstood it. So she was telling us how the map worked. She misunderstood it, and she had already voted on that map. So clearly this process has been so rushed that the committee members weren't even clear on what the map was. Anyway, and that was a big misunderstanding in the community. But as far as the demographer's report that we don't have, Dr. Finch said within a year it might not matter. But looking at the slides, the 24-25 report says that we'll have 1,500 students at Union Park in 10 years. If you look at Heather's slides, it says about 1,000 students at Union Park in 10 years. So if she has accurate data, we don't. What's going on here? We're just very confused. We've received a lot of conflicting information, a lot of data that we don't understand, or that doesn't add up, I guess. Grandfathering, we've told vocally, yes, you can be grandfathered in. The website says yes. Finch said he'd recommend it on his questions with Kurt. Heather said tonight it's contingent upon space. So we're receiving a lot of conflicting information. Same as with siblings. This website says there's no priority given to siblings for enrollment in special programs, but we've been told it's fine. Your siblings will probably get in, they'll get priority. This is just a big mess, and we need more time. If it's so rushed that if we can do this next year and then start the process in January, February with the meetings and the staffing and stuff, I think that would give us a lot more information, a lot more clarity, and we can have a lot more propositions for solutions.
Good evening, Governing Board. This is Megan Patel here. First off, I want to congratulate you on the override success. That vote reflected trust that the board will make thoughtful, long-term decisions in the best interest of the students. I also want to acknowledge the rezoning committee for all of your time and energy in this effort. Your work matters. I'm not here to argue that rezoning will never happen. Growth projections through 2035 may require adjustments. What I am asking is that you consider not rushing the deal. Permanent boundary changes should align with verified growth and stable data. The district has worked with the same demographer for years, and I respect the continuity and expertise that this gentleman brings in their firm. But during a community hearing, unsolicited, the committee volunteered that this firm is, quote, the only shop in town. For a decision of this scale, that level of exclusivity gives me pause, not because the data is wrong, and I'm not implying that, but because the stakes are high. Independent validation strengthens confidence. It reinforces responsible governance. If rezoning is inevitable, timing matters. Implementing changes too early increases likelihood that families will be moved more than once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, I heard this evening, under this current trajectory. My son is enrolled in Union Park. He is in the Spanish immersion program. Under this plan, he will be rezoned to Norterra Canyon, which does not offer a comparable immersion pathway. Beyond academics, one of the most consistent concerns voiced by parents was reliable transportation. I'm here tonight with other immersion families whose children do rely on the bus service. During the working session, the board member asked whether the 35, I think it's 37, immersion students that do ride the bus, it was not known. I can tell you, my friends here, 100% of us are in immersion and 100% of us rely on the bus. When the bus census counts are conducted, parents are notified in advance. Therefore, behavior naturally shifts. The snapshots may not reflect typical ridership patterns, and decisions of this magnitude should really rely. We also have been informed by our principal that the aftercare at UP is consistently full. There's no excess capacity, and if transportation patterns shift, more families will require aftercare, and there's no current buffer for that to absorb that demand. I would ask the board to consider support mechanisms that will be available for students navigating this transition. Some children, this is going to be a significant life change. It affects their sense of belonging, their self-esteem, increased anxiety, especially if they're leaving a program and their peer group that they've grown up with. While changes can build resilience, resilience is strengthened when students feel supported. If this moves forward, mental health and counseling supports need to be clearly communicated, and how that's done in 90 days, I'm not sure, after you vote, by the time it gets implemented. Retaining and optimizing buildings is important, but that's just infrastructure. Your projections extend through 2035. That suggests that this is a planning horizon, not an immediate crisis. For all these reasons, I recommend delaying the implementation of the bill. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Marissa Flynn, and I'm here tonight asking at a minimum to delay the rezoning decision. This process has not been met with the level of transparency that our families deserve. There was no broad parent communication inviting participation on the committee initially. Meeting dates were not initially posted on the website. Information has been shared inconsistently. At one point, 2 different maps were posted on the website for weeks without staff realizing until we, parents, pointed it out. Incorrect information has circulated publicly from a committee member and then had to be corrected by district. And perhaps most concerning, families were repeatedly told that students would be guaranteed to be grandfathered into their current schools. Yet during a recent webinar, Dr. Finch stated that it was not guaranteed and would require a vote. Families cannot make informed decisions or have comment when the information that we receive keeps changing. For those of us in Spanish immersion, the impact is even greater. We signed an 8-year commitment to participate in this program with the district. The district should be showing the same 8-year commitment to our children. Rezoning immersion students does not create available space in our schools because students cannot enter the immersion program after the 1st grade. It is not similar to other specialized programs the district offers. My daughter will be in 3rd grade. If we have to move her because of the rezoning,
another child will not be able to take her seat unless they are proficient enough with Spanish, which is highly unlikely. So you are moving children, and it is not going to actually make any available space in our classrooms. Dr. Finch has repeatedly stated that we as parents are upset because we're attached to a mascot. During the working session, somebody else said that it was because Union Park has only been open for 5 years. I've never mentioned any of those as a parent, and I've never heard any of them during any meeting that I attended. I'm actually the PTSA president at my kids' school. I've raised over $200,000 and volunteered countless hours. I care because this is my community. These are where my children spend most of their day and working on learning and growing up. Rezoning's decisions affect children's education, stability, well-being, and at the very least, our community deserves more time, clearer communication, and firm answers about grandfathering and transportation before any vote is taken to meet an HR deadline. Thank you for consideration.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Beckman. I am a parent at Union Park as well. I have two daughters, one in 6th grade who also went through COVID and switching schools already. I have another daughter in Spanish immersion in 2nd grade who is thriving and so excited to be speaking Spanish. The families in this community made an 8-year commitment when we signed our contracts. Those contracts were very important, and we were told how important they were. The Spanish immersion program at Deer Valley honored our commitment, and we did that. And we honored our commitment by turning down jobs, activities, and opportunities to keep our children in this program. Asking families to leave is unacceptable. We kept our promise, and the district should be keeping theirs. The boundary process has lacked transparency from the beginning. Plans were never presented as open for debate. Parent concerns were minimized. There were laughs. Maps were made unclear, and even final changes were done after the last meetings. All of this makes us feel very uneasy about making this decision and that our future is in everybody else's hands. All I care about at this point is my kids and having a stable school life where they're happy and thriving with the kids that they've known and the things that they're learning. We've been assured that the kids will be grandfathered in, but now it's being contradicted by that, by this last meeting with Dr. Finch. The last minute changes after enrollment decisions after enrollment for students coming in have already been made is also going to create a lot of chaos for the schools. And this cannot result in an informed decision. The changes create real hardships for working families. Many households depend on transportation and aftercare programs, and already having long wait lists, it makes it even more unclear for us. Without any plans for staffing and support, families without flexible work schedules or that work outside the home will be left without many options. This proposal also threatens the success of the Spanish immersion program, a specialized program that cannot be joined after the 1st grade. Removing students does not create space for others and reduces access to language introduction at North Terra Canyon would set our students back. Families must also, families are not guaranteed to be grandfathered in, like I said before, based on their siblings. So children might even be split, which again causes a lot more stress on the parents. I ask you to please consider waiting on this vote till we have more time to consider our options.
Hello. Dr. Finch, you're actually going to like this one specifically.
Please state your name.
My name's Josh. So Dr. Finch, you'll like this specifically because with the boundary lines, I do have a very specific request, of course, for my kid. So looking at the demographer, drawing the lines on it, I'm talking about Stetson Hills Elementary. The Indian Springs neighborhood is divided between schools, 47th Avenue and 49th Avenue. In talking about busing where you guys don't know if you have it, if it's not, I remember riding the bus as a kid. It's kind of an experience that I'd like my kids to have the option for. Being on the 49th side, that would not be an option, even if he's grandfathered in from first grade. We specifically moved in that neighborhood for a K-8 school. The support that Stetson Elementary is given with IEP for the kid, psychologist, pathologist, the support of the administration, his teachers has been amazing. It's a huge change from our kindergarten experience. I have a kid in the Sandra Day pre-K program, hopefully going to kindergarten at Stetson. So the ask here is very specifically to make the map make a little more sense when you look at it laid out, include the whole Indian Springs neighborhood for the community involvement, for all the families there. I gotta imagine the bus route would be a little easier without two of them going from Happy Valley into a neighborhood. You know, the neighborhoods connect. That was it. Thank you guys for your time. I guess one thing regarding, I didn't get a survey. In all honesty, this is kind of the first thing that fit my work schedule coming to these events. I understand you had a few meetings. I have a job too. So I don't see some of the things that we said we're getting. And it does seem like you guys didn't get some of the things either based on my first impression here. We're rushing to a decision. I don't know. That's the impression I had from an outsider first time seeing it. But yeah, the 49th district seemed kind of goofy on the map. Thank you all for your time.
Next item on the agenda, governing board reports. Dr. Pack.
So today I had the pleasure of visiting Sunrise Elementary and meeting with Principal Martelli. I got to see the babies, the early childhood Head Start area. In addition to the great DVUSD Head Start employees who rock, hold, and feed infants, Head Start, I did not know this, so I want to share, Head Start has a partnership with the Arizona Academy of Nursing where nursing students earn hours assisting in the early childhood area with babies. So I think that's wonderful, our community outreach. I also saw effective reading intervention in action. I learned that this is a community school with no buses. Much like Bel Air Traditional School, which does not provide transportation. If you stop by the campus, be sure to meet Sunny the Beta Fish in Principal Martelli's office. Go Lions. I also visited Terramar School today, Terramar School for the Arts, and met Principal Garcia. Secretary Lisa, shout out to her. She did an amazing job pinch hitting, touring me around the school until Principal Garcia's meeting ended. I toured the arts and music rooms, saw children learning to play the ukulele, really good, and saw many legacy art projects adorning the campus walls, stairs, ceilings, and even a barrel trash can. Go Titans. I reviewed additional vouchers with some batches totaling approximately 200 pages. Fun fact, Stetson Hills purchased a new Kiln Master, so there may be some impressive student clay projects in the future. I also reviewed the voucher for the 6 feet strollers for the early Head Start program, which I saw those strollers. They're pretty cool. I watched the long-term committee member Zoom, as I mentioned earlier, and I responded to many emails from parents in the district who had concerns about our boundary changes. I will not read the rest of this paragraph since I went into that much more earlier. I also reviewed all the documents related to this evening's board meeting and submitted questions, as I said before. As a former FBLA president in my youth, a big shout out to 6 FBLA students who competed at the FBLA regionals. Way to go, DVUSD. I want to also do a shout out volunteer income tax assistance, VITA tax prep, a shout out to Tiffany Kurtz, and certainly a nod to Mr. Rich Russell back in the day, who had me help with VITA back in the day. So who got students back in the 80s involved in the VITA, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. So some of those Deer Valley graduates went on to become accountants. So this VITA tax program is now at Sandra Day O'Connor High School and the same campus that had the 5 FBLA accounting medals, just saying. Shout out to all the counselors in DVUSD during National School Counselors Week. And one last thing, I am excited to learn about and applaud the district, and more specifically IS&T, which is, I think, Information Systems and Technology, for its plans to move to Gmail, which has to be more cost efficient. While reviewing and signing vouchers, I have noticed a significant number of payouts for non-technology software with expensive licenses, and I do wonder whether some may be duplicative across applications. I look forward to seeing the cost-saving benefits when Gmail is rolled out in June of 2026, I believe, and would also like to request that the district and/or IS&T provide the board with an inventory analysis and summary of current non-instructional software in use. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pack. Mr. Botfeld. I'm sorry, hold on a second. Go ahead. Okay. Didn't want to cut you off. Sorry. All right.
Do that again.
All right.
I think most of you know that I speak about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Today, unfortunately, it's the good, the bad, and the worse, and the ugly. Let's start with the good. I don't know how many of you got to Diamond Canyon for the Night of Excellence, but it was incredible. I don't know how many, excuse me. I don't know how many of you know that the Deer Valley School District is not just in the top 10% of the state, it's in the top 10% of the country. Let's talk about the bad for a little bit. Boundaries are tough. And no matter what decisions are made, somebody's going to get hurt. And for that, I can only say, I'm sorry. Money is part of the issue. That's all this is all about. And think about the ESA voucher system in this state. $1 billion. It counts for 1/2 of the state's deficit. And Tom Horn says that only 1% or less of the voucher program is unallowable purchases. Well, a news organization just came up with it's 20% of all transactions. Think about the prohibitive items. Diamonds, gift cards, large appliances, luxury lingerie with an ESL voucher. Wow. Think about an IEP student who applies to a private school. And that private school takes him or her or it or they or whatever, and at the end of 99 days kicks him out but keeps the voucher money. Why is this happening? Well, there's no oversight over the voucher system right now. So what's going to happen? There's the representatives of AEA and SAZ filed a ballot initiative for oversight. If you get asked to sign a petition, do so. Why? Because public schools are what it's all about. This state rates 49th in public school education. Public school money is being siphoned to buy diamonds and lingerie. It's ridiculous. That's the good and the bad. The ugly, that's me.
I thought you had a worse you wanted to share. You said good, bad, worse, and ugly.
Oh, the worst?
Yeah.
My attitude towards this whole thing.
Okay. All right. Ms. Simichek.
Happy National Black History Month. February is Black History Month. I was able to attend the DVOSD substitute celebration here at the district office with the fellow members. It was really wonderful. Let's see, what else do I have? I think, Mr. Botfeld, you should come down to the Ed Committee and tell. You know your stuff. No, the ESA voucher program is something that we hopefully someday we'll get some accountability and transparency over, but we continue to not hear our bills heard down there at the ledge. But yeah, I just I don't have a whole lot to say. My life really is consumed at the ledge right now. But I do want to point out a couple of things that I didn't get to share that kind of popped up in my mind. There was this idea about kicking the can down the curb and in a year from now having the same questions and answers. But I really do truly feel that the solution here is to form a committee that has the voices of everybody in this community. And I feel like if we do that, then we won't be having the same conversations. So I really want to just really acknowledge that and put that out there as a solution, because it seems like that might not be on people's minds as something that we can do, because we keep talking about how we have to get this done, but we also can take a huge step back. And I also want to remind everybody that this is the community that helped pass our bond in November, and it's really important that we work together as a community, because when we needed them, they came for us, and now it's our job to help them. The last thing I wanted to share, we lost another student last week in one of our high schools, and I've said this before and I'll say it again. Every time you get that text message that we've lost a student, it is the absolute worst message you can get in a day, and it makes you think. And I have requested that Kid in a Corner be brought in to give a presentation. They are an organization that help students with peer-to-peer solutions for mental health, which is when you lose a student and it can be prevented, makes you, I just want to bring it out there again, because I have asked multiple times. They have come to speak at public comment, and I would really like to request once again that they come and be able to at least give a presentation on what they can provide our students, and start at this high school level so that we don't lose another student here in the Deer Valley Unified School District. That's all I got.
Thank you, Ms. Simichek. Just so the community is aware, Ms. Fisher did have to drop off the call, and she wanted me to make sure to thank the community members for coming tonight on her behalf. So that's the extent of her board report that she's passed on. For my report tonight, I just wanted to start by saying we had a lot of speakers tonight, and I need for the community to understand, if you did not hear when Dr. Pack gets ready to announce everybody to speak, we're not allowed to directly respond to you. So please don't take personal offense that none of us addressing specifically anything that you brought up, because it's against the rules. So that being said, I went to Barry Goldwater High School, Deer Valley High School, and Mountain Ridge High School the week of the walkouts, and specifically visited with the principals. I can tell you for a fact that when I went into Barry Goldwater, the principal at Goldwater was in the process of speaking to the students, organizing the walkout. So there is conversation happening with the kids to make sure they understand what it is that they're wanting to do, and the limits with which the district can legally help or hinder, or whichever side of the aisle you might be on that. And I asked the principals in each one of those three campuses, because I always ask them, tell me something good, tell me that's a challenge, and now go show me something. And the something that I asked to see on those visits were, why don't you take me to your civics classes? I want to see what's going on in the civics classes. Because again, depending which side of the aisle you're on, maybe we're doing something nefarious. And so it was awesome to see that we were discussing the Age of Enlightenment in the AP class in one of the schools, and the other civics classes in the other schools were all on World War I history. And they were discussing blimps and different strategies and trench warfare and all that sort of stuff. So those were some of the schools that I made visits to during since the last board meeting. Also visited with or attended the Interfaith Council meeting. For those of you that don't know, Dr. Finch puts on an Interfaith Council meeting here at the district office several times a year, where invitations are sent out to leaders in the community faith-based leaders so that they can come in and get a download on what's going on in the district and different opportunities for them to be of service. I also was able to attend the Diamond Canyon Evening of Excellence. If you ever get a chance to attend that, you should. Every grade puts on an amazing performance of one way or the other, and we have some amazingly talented individuals in our district. On that note, I attended Sandra Day O'Connor's presentation of your good man, Charlie Brown. And I just can't say it enough. I say it almost every time I give a board report. If you have an opportunity to get to one of our campuses for one of their productions, I don't care what production, whether it's athletics or whether it's marching band or if it's drama, you gotta go, because I remember being in school and I didn't know anybody that was as talented as some of these kids, and I know I wasn't. You really got to see these kids because they are amazing. I attended the sub-recognition event here at the district office with my two peers over here to my right, and that's an amazing thing that goes on quite often here in the district, where different subs at different levels and different jobs throughout the district are nominated by their campuses to come down and get some special recognition for the amazing jobs that they do. Attended Hillcrest Elementary, and for those of you that follow me on Facebook, you probably got to see some of the videos. I did not know that they did this, but the STEM 1 and STEM 2 classes there every put on a cardboard soapbox derby. Now, for those of you that are as old as I am, you might know what that is, but for those of you that don't, we used to build soapbox cars big enough for you to sit in that were made out of wood and steel and all that kind of stuff. Well, the challenge for these kids is to build theirs big enough for them to sit in completely out of cardboard. And the STEM teacher puts a ramp out there, out in the field, made out of plywood sheets, and they race themselves down the hill, and they keep track of distance and time and whatnot. And it was a pretty amazing thing to witness. For those of you that are aware, and for those of you that aren't, I partner with Miss Ann Ordway, who served for a long time on the board. Once a month, we go out through donations from community businesses and do what we affectionately call a snack attack to anywhere from 4 to 5 campuses. We will deliver an entire lunchroom full of various snacks to thank the teachers and the staff for everything that they do and give them a little sweet treat. I was also able to show up here at the district office for Student Support Services community event, in which they had tables set up where the community could see the kind of transition from school to work opportunities that are there. We used to call it Industrial Cooperative Education back when I was attending Deer Valley High School, but now they call it TSW. And if you ever are needing something to do on any given night in this district, just get on the district website, pick on a campus, and I can guarantee you there's some amazing things to see. I want to echo my peers and thank everybody for showing up, because anytime the community leaves important decisions up to just us 5 knuckleheads, there's no telling what you're going to get. So it's always good to hear from and see the community, and thank you again for being here. Yeah, you can clap for that. So, that's for you guys.
Yeah.
Dr. Finch.
That was on cue. It's not the same. You got to hold up a sign or something. Yeah, I've talked a little bit about, again, summarize that this is the process. This is always the process. It always goes like this. We form the committee, or it's already formed by school board policy, and I can guarantee it followed school board policy. The gentleman at the end talked a little bit about the process, and so I just want to make sure that everybody knows that this follows the process, and this is the first time that the board will hear it. All of the work of the 50-plus hours that the demographer / committee puts in. The same thing happens with curriculum in this scenario as well. And then we have 2 weeks again for another window where we get more feedback from the community, answer board questions, find out things that they're interested in. For example, check out transportation, check out after care. So this is exactly how it's supposed to happen. And so come March 10th, hopefully we'll have some answers to some of those questions. Maybe we'll do a little more digging. So it's following the process exactly how it's supposed to. The feedback can still come in to the committee. I believe the committee is even going to meet one more time. Well, taking the feedback from the board and then work on it a little bit more. So thanks again I just want to thank again the committee for the probably hundreds of hours that Gail and Heather put into it, and then the 50-plus hours that the committee put into it as well. Going through all the numbers, going through all the data, and that's not an easy job. It is the most difficult decision board members make from a political standpoint. Even if the numbers are easy cheesy, the political side is not the fun side because it does impact families. So I get that. I totally understand that. Again, that's part of my job to make those tough decisions or tough recommendations. And I don't take them lightly. I do want to brag about Ms. Simachek while I have the microphone. If you haven't been watching and you can watch her online if you want. If you want to have a snoozer, watch the Education Committee. It's really a one-man show. But Mr. Gress basically puts his items out. And it appears that Ms. Simachek is the one that stands up to him. And so I want to say, you go, girl. Keep going. Give him an earful. Tell him thanks from Dr. Finch. Some other things that are happening right now. All of our teams are in the middle of the playoffs. There's a couple happening tonight. And we'll have to find out the scores, how we did. We have a bunch of teams in the open and soccer and basketball and wrestling. And so the next 10 days will determine, hopefully, we can beat our 70 state titles we had last year. DECA, CTE, and all those programs are going on at the same time. We've had 2 years in a row of 70 state titles. And so I'm thinking 70 is the watermark for us. Looking forward to our students excelling. I try to get to as many of those events as I can. I want to do a shout out to Miss Melantano. She, the wife of Marshall, everybody knows Marshall. She's been involved in, I went actually to surprise her in her classroom. She was subbing at Hillcrest. She put in 40 years into the Deer Valley machine, and she's been subbing. If you add up all the math of her service, I believe it's 58 years that she was serving education. That's a big deal. So we surprised her and brought her one of her teaching buddies with us, and wasn't a dry eye in the house. So thanks, Ms. Melitano, for your service to education in general and to Deer Valley. We did have the state bus rodeo championship here on February 7th, and Herman Haig won it, the state title. Good for him. I didn't see him do a Brody in the bus, but I think there's some other stuff he had to do with it. He didn't jump on it and ride it like a horse. I don't know why they call it a rodeo, but he did. He actually won the state title, so he'll be going to nationals. I believe that's the second state winner we've had, maybe third in the last, since I've been here. We also had a fifth and a sixth there. Other than that, Student Summit's coming up March 5th. That's where the students, about 80 students put a summit, leadership summit, at Goldwater for about 350, 400 kids that come and have fun at that. That's it. Thanks.
I want to thank everybody for attending tonight. Future governing board meetings are listed on the district website. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned.
Thank you.